The Force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web of light and darkness. For 1,000 generations, the Jedi have served as its guardians, interpreting its will and maintaining balance. But what happens when brilliance arrives that owes nothing to the Force, when military genius transcends mysticism, and strategy becomes its own form of power? The hyperspace lanes above Coruscant had carried countless ships across the millennia, but nothing like this. No distress signals preceded them. No Republic transponder codes identified them. 2 massive fleets materialized simultaneously in the planet's orbital space, their hulls bearing no markings the Jedi Temple's databases could recognize. The ships were sleek, angular, built for function over the ornate aesthetics that dominated galactic warship design. They hung in the void like metallic constellations, their weapon systems powered down, but radiating a readiness that made every Republic fleet captain's hand hover over the alert klaxon. On the bridge of the Brunhild, Reinhard von Lohengrin stood with the posture of a man who had conquered empires. His golden hair caught the light of Coruscant's sun, and his ice-blue eyes swept across the viewscreen with calculated precision. The planet below was a city world, its surface entirely consumed by urban sprawl, a testament to either magnificent ambition or grotesque excess. He had not yet decided which. "Admiral, we've completed our analysis," Senior Admiral Paul von Oberstein reported, his artificial eyes gleaming as he studied the holographic display. "We are no longer in our galaxy. The stellar cartography matches nothing in our databases. Gravitational signatures, planetary distributions, even the fundamental constants of hyperspace navigation have shifted." Reinhard's expression remained impassive, but his fingers tightened almost imperceptibly on the command rail. "The enemy fleet, the Hyperion and its battle group emerged 16,000 kilometers to our port side," Oberstein continued. "They appear as disoriented as we are." A slight smile touched Reinhard's lips. Even across the impossible gulf that had swallowed both fleets, Yang Wen-Li remained his shadow. The universe itself could not separate them. Across that 16,000-kilometer void, on the bridge of the Hyperion, Fleet Admiral Yang Wen-Li was considerably less composed than his legendary rival. He sat in his command chair with his perpetual cup of tea, now cold, and stared at the readings with the expression of a man watching his worst philosophical nightmare materialize. "So," Yang said quietly, "we've somehow been transported to another galaxy entirely. And the first thing we see is a planet that's paved over its entire surface. Democracy at work, I suppose." Lieutenant Commander Frederica Greenhill stood at his side, her own composure admirably intact despite the circumstances. "Sir, we're receiving multiple hails from the planet below. They're demanding identification and threatening to open fire if we don't power down our weapon systems." "How rude," Yang murmured. "We arrive as their guests, uninvited guests, admittedly, and they immediately threaten violence. Though I suppose appearing in their orbit with a battle fleet doesn't suggest peaceful intentions." He sighed. "Tell them we mean no harm and request permission to send a diplomatic envoy." "And Frederica?" "Yes, sir. Keep all weapons hot. I don't trust people who lead with threats. If you want to see more legendary commanders and characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, smash that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. The Force blesses those who support this channel." In the Jedi Temple's council chamber, Master Yoda sat in troubled contemplation. This was something else, a void where the Force should have revealed intent but found only absence. Not emptiness, but incomprehension, as if looking at a language one had never learned. "Unprecedented this is," Yoda said softly. "Feel them in the Force. I cannot. Yet exist. They clearly do." Mace Windu stood at the chamber's window, watching the distant specks of the unknown fleets. 2 separate groups, emerging simultaneously. The timing suggests they're connected, possibly hostile to each other. "We could be looking at a war spilling into our galaxy, or an opportunity," Obi-Wan Kenobi suggested from his seat. "If they're enemies displaced from their home, they might be willing to negotiate." The Republic needs allies, especially with Dooku's forces growing bolder, or they might see a weakened Republic and smell blood in the water. Windu countered. We're stretched thin across 1,000 systems. The last thing we need is another threat. Agree, I do, Yoda said. Yet hasty judgment we must avoid. Meet with them we shall. Understand their purpose we must. In the Chancellor's office, Palpatine received the news with careful interest. His expression showed concern appropriate for a Republic leader facing unknown warships above his capital. But behind his eyes, calculations spun with Sith precision. The Force showed him nothing of these newcomers unusual, but not unprecedented. There were species and individuals who existed outside the Force's direct touch. What intrigued him more were the reports from Republic intelligence. The ships were advanced, their technology roughly equivalent to Republic standards, but with different design philosophies. The two fleets were clearly distinct factions, possibly enemies. And most interesting of all, preliminary communication intercepts suggested both groups possessed sophisticated military hierarchies and strategic doctrines. Unknown variables, Palpatine murmured to the empty office. How inconvenient. Aboard the Brunhild, Reinhard made his decision. Open a channel to all ships in this system. Broadcast on all frequencies. When the channel opened, his voice carried the absolute authority of a man who had never questioned his right to command. This is Admiral Reinhard von Lohengram of the Galactic Empire. We have arrived in your space through circumstances beyond our control. We seek information about our location and safe passage to assess our situation. We have no hostile intent toward your Republic, but we will defend ourselves if attacked. Respond within the hour, or we will take your silence as permission to proceed as we see fit. Yang Wenli heard the broadcast and groaned. Something less likely to start an interstellar incident. His transmission was considerably more diplomatic, explaining their displacement, requesting dialogue, and offering to share sensor data to prove they posed no immediate threat. But Yang made sure to add a quiet addendum that only the most perceptive listeners would catch. We understand you may view our arrival with suspicion. That is wise. Trust, after all, must be earned through actions, not words. In the temple, Mace Windu replayed both messages. Two very different leaders. The first demands, the second requests. But both are clearly military commanders of significant rank. More than rank, Obi-Wan observed. Listen to how their subordinates address them. These aren't just officers. These are legends in their own right. Men who inspire complete loyalty. Yoda's ears twitched. Dangerous, such men can be. Inspire loyalty they may, but to what cause? Light or darkness? The Force reveals not. Our eyes alone must judge. The old master was right to worry. In a galaxy balanced on the knife's edge between Republic and Separatist, between Jedi and Sith, between democracy and tyranny, two military geniuses who owed allegiance to neither side had just entered the board, and neither Reinhard von Lohengram nor Yang Wenli had any intention of becoming anyone's pawn. The pieces were set. The game was about to begin. The Republic's response arrived within the hour. A carefully worded invitation to send diplomatic envoys to the surface under Jedi escort, with the explicit condition that both fleets remain in orbit with weapon systems on standby but not locked on planetary targets. It was, Yang noted with approval, a reasonable compromise that acknowledged the mutual uncertainty without demanding either side show weakness. Reinhard's reaction was less charitable. They presume to set conditions for us? We could reduce their orbital defense platforms to scrap in under 10 minutes. We could, Paul von Oberstein agreed, his artificial eyes reflecting the tactical displays, but such action would provide no strategic advantage. We require information about this galaxy, its political structures, and potential resources for our return home. Unnecessary conflict serves no purpose. Reinhard's jaw tightened, but he gave a sharp nod. Brilliance in battle meant nothing without clear objectives. Very well. Prepare a shuttle. I'll meet with these Jedi myself. If Yang Wenli is foolish enough to place himself in potential enemy hands, I should at least match his gesture. A curious logic, sir, Oberstein observed, with the faintest hint of what might have been amusement. Curious or not, I won't let that man claim moral superiority. By taking risks I'm unwilling to match. Reinhard turned from the viewport, his cape sweeping dramatically. Besides, I want to see what kind of civilization builds a city over an entire planet. Either they've achieved something magnificent, or they've committed an atrocity on an incomprehensible scale. Yang Wenli's shuttle descended through Coruscant's atmosphere with considerably less dramatic flair. He sat in the passenger compartment, actually managing to procure fresh tea from somewhere, and watched the endless cityscape scroll past the viewport. Buildings stretched from surface to stratosphere, traffic lanes layered in three-dimensional complexity that made his tactical mind ache, trying to calculate optimal flow patterns. It's obscene, he said quietly. How many resources does it take to sustain a planet like this? How many worlds must be stripped bare to feed this kind of consumption? Frederica Greenhill, who had insisted on accompanying him despite his protests, studied the city with more analytical detachment. The logistics alone suggest a government with reach across dozens, perhaps hundreds of systems. This isn't a single-planet civilization. This is a capital in the truest sense. Which means we've stumbled into someone's galactic empire, Yang said. Or republic, I suppose, given their self-identification, though I've learned to be skeptical of governments that feel the need to include democratic or free in their official names. The more you insist you're free, the more I suspect you're not. The shuttle touched down on a temple landing platform, and Yang got his first look at the Jedi. They were an interesting group, 3 humans and 1 small alien creature with long ears and ancient eyes. All wore robes of brown and cream, and all carried what appeared to be metallic cylinders on their belts. Some kind of ceremonial weapon, perhaps, or religious iconography. What struck Yang immediately was their posture. These were warriors pretending to be monks, or perhaps monks forced to become warriors. The distinction mattered philosophically speaking, but the practical result was the same. Dangerous individuals who believed themselves righteous. For Acher, in his experience, that was the most dangerous combination of all. Reinhard's shuttle arrived moments later, and Yang had to suppress a smile. The golden-haired admiral descended the ramp with the bearing of a conquering emperor, his dress uniform immaculate, his expression coolly assessing. Their eyes met across the landing platform, and for a moment, the weight of their shared history hung between them. Battles fought, strategies countered, an endless chess match played across the stars. Then Reinhard inclined his head fractionally, and Yang returned the gesture. Whatever else they were to each other, they were both strangers here. The game could wait. Mace Windu stepped forward, his hand resting casually near his lightsaber, a gesture Yang's tactical instincts immediately identified as a warning. I am Jedi Master Mace Windu. On behalf of the Jedi Council and the Galactic Republic, I welcome you to Coruscant. These are Masters Yoda, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Ki-Adi-Mundi. Reinhard spoke first, his voice carrying the absolute confidence of nobility. I am Admiral Reinhard von Lohengram, Supreme Commander of the Galactic Empire's Space Fleet. I appreciate your hospitality, though I trust you understand we will be monitoring our ship's status throughout these discussions. And I'm Yang Wenli, Yang added with considerably less formality, Fleet Admiral of the Free Planets Alliance. I'd offer more impressive titles, but I've always found them tedious. I'm here because I'm lost, and hoping you can help me get unlost. Assuming you don't mind helping people who appeared in your sky with battleships. Obi-Wan smiled slightly at that. Candor is refreshing. Please follow us. The council chamber awaits. As they walked through the temple corridors, Yoda studied both admirals with penetrating intensity. The small Jedi Master moved with a deceptive slowness that reminded Yang of certain martial arts masters he'd known, the economy of motion that suggested explosive capability when needed. The old one was dangerous, They all were. In their way. Feel you in the Force. I do not, Yoda said suddenly. Unusual this is. All living things, connected to the Force, they are. Yet you, absent, you seem, not dead to it, but foreign. The Force? Reinhardt asked, his tone making clear he expected a straight answer. An energy field created by all living things, Obi-Wan explained. It surrounds us, penetrates us, binds the galaxy together. The Jedi serve as its guardians, using its power to maintain peace and justice. Yang's eyebrows rose slightly. Mysticism backed by political authority. And these powers you mention, they're real? Demonstrable? Mace Windu's hand moved in a subtle gesture, and a nearby meditation sphere lifted from its pedestal, floating through the air to hover between them before settling back down. Telekinesis, Yang said, his mind already racing through tactical implications. Interesting. What are the limitations? Range, mass, concentration requirements, susceptibility to countermeasures? You reduce the Force to mere tactics? Ki-Adi-Mundi asked. His tone somewhere between offended and intrigued. I reduce everything to tactics, Yang admitted. It's a professional hazard, but if you're fighting a war, and I assume you are, given the military traffic we detected in orbit, then understanding your assets and liabilities is essential. Unless this Force of yours makes war obsolete, nothing makes war obsolete, Reinhardt said coldly. Men create conflict because they desire different outcomes for the universe. Unless you eliminate human will itself, there will always be war. Grim philosophy, Obi-Wan observed. Realistic philosophy, Reinhardt corrected. I've studied enough history to know that peace is the brief intermission between conflicts, not the natural state of civilization. The question is not whether there will be war, but whether it will be fought for worthy causes. They entered the council chamber, a circular room with seats arranged in a ring and vast windows showing Coruscant's endless sprawl. Yang immediately noted the defensive inadequacies: too much glass, limited cover, single entrance point that could be easily blocked. Then he caught himself. He was in a diplomatic meeting, not planning an assault. The council members took their seats, and Reinhardt and Yang were left standing in the center, a power dynamic Yang recognized immediately. Subtle dominance through positioning, effective against those who could be intimidated. Less so against men who had commanded fleets. Much to discuss, we have, Yoda began. But first, understand we must. Your purpose here. Accident, you claim. Evidence of this? Have you? Yang glanced at Reinhardt, and some unspoken communication passed between them. For all their rivalry, they were both pragmatists. Information shared served both their interests here. Our fleets engaged in battle, Yang explained. A decisive encounter in the estate system. During the height of the conflict, spatial anomalies began manifesting tears in the fabric of space itself. Before we could disengage, both our forces were drawn through what I can only describe as a dimensional rift. We emerged here, in your galaxy, with no means of return that we've yet identified. Two enemies brought together, Mace Windu said. Will you continue your war here? Reinhardt's smile was sharp as broken glass. That depends entirely on Yang Wen-Li. I've never been the one to refuse battle. 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 How reassuring, Yang said dryly. To answer the Master's question, we're both smart enough to recognize that killing each other in an unknown galaxy serves no strategic purpose. We can resume our philosophical disagreements after we understand where we are and how to get home. Philosophical disagreements, Obi-Wan repeated. An interesting description for a war. All wars are philosophical at their core, Yang replied. The question of how societies should be governed, who should hold power, what rights individuals possess. These aren't military questions, they're philosophical ones. We simply use military force to resolve them when dialogue fails. And which philosophy do each of you represent? Ki-Adi-Mundi asked. Reinhard answered without hesitation. I believe in meritocracy enforced by strength. The strong should rule, the weak should follow, and incompetent leadership should be overthrown without mercy. Democracy is a lie that empowers mediocrities and punishes excellence. The Jedi Council members exchanged glances. That was direct. Yang sighed. And I believe in democracy, for all its flaws. Because giving power to any single individual, no matter how brilliant, inevitably leads to tyranny. People should have the right to choose their leaders, even if they choose poorly. Better to suffer through incompetent elected officials than to live under a dictator who decides your fate without your consent. Even if that dictator is benevolent? Obi-Wan asked. Especially if that dictator is benevolent, Yang said firmly. Because benevolent dictators die, and there's no guarantee their successors will share their virtues. Systems matter more than individuals. Democracy survives bad leaders. Autocracy rarely survives good ones. Reinhard's expression darkened. You've seen the corruption in your own alliance. The incompetent politicians who send soldiers to die while enriching themselves. I defend the right of people to eventually vote them out, Yang countered. Your system gives them no recourse at all, except rebellion. And rebellion is just another form of dictatorship, wearing revolutionary clothes. The argument was old, comfortable in its familiarity, and both men could have continued for hours. But Yoda's walking stick tapped the floor with finality. Interesting this debate is. But relevant to our immediate concerns? It is not. A war? The Republic fights. Against the Separatists, we struggle. Into this conflict, you have arrived. Involvement? You seek? And there it was, the real question. Yang and Reinhard locked eyes across the chamber, both recognizing the trap. Whatever they answered would define their relationship with this republic and its mystical guardians. Yang spoke first, his tone carefully neutral. We seek information and resources to return home. If providing military assistance earns us those resources, we're open to discussion. But we're not mercenaries to be hired without understanding the full picture. Before we commit to anything, we need to know what we'd be fighting for and against. Fair enough, Mace Windu said. Then let me tell you about a conflict that's tearing our galaxy apart, and the enemy who believes democracy itself is a failed experiment. As the Jedi began their explanation, Yang felt a familiar weight settle in his chest. He'd been in this room for less than an hour, and already he could feel the gravity of another war pulling at him. Behind him, Reinhard stood with the posture of a man eager for the challenge. Different philosophies, same cursed fate. The briefing lasted 3 hours, and with each passing minute, Yang Wenli's tea grew colder and his expression more troubled. The Jedi Council presented the Clone Wars as a clear-cut conflict, the Democratic Republic versus the Separatist Alliance. Freedom against tyranny. Peace against chaos. But Yang had spent his entire career reading between the lines of official narratives, and the gaps in this one were vast enough to hide fleets. Let me see if I understand correctly, Yang said, interrupting Master Ki-Adi-Mundi's description of a recent separatist attack. The separatist movement began because star systems felt overtaxed and underrepresented by the Republic Senate. They attempted to secede peacefully. The Republic refused to allow secession and raised an army, a clone army, purchased from corporate contractors to force them back into compliance. The council chamber fell silent. Obi-Wan shifted uncomfortably. When you phrase it that way, you make the Republic sound like an empire refusing to let its colonies go? Yang finished. Yes, that's intentional. I'm trying to understand the actual conflict, not the sanitized version. From a purely logical standpoint, if systems wish to leave a voluntary political union, preventing them through military force transforms that union from voluntary to compulsory. The Separatists are led by Count Dooku, Mace Windu said, his voice hard. A fallen Jedi who has embraced the dark side of the Force. Their cause may have begun with legitimate grievances, but it's been corrupted." End quote. A lever heading off her hand. End quote. Corrupted how? Reinhardt asked, speaking for the first time since the briefing began. He'd been listening with the focused intensity of a predator studying prey, by which I mean, what are their actual actions versus their stated goals? Rhetoric is worthless. Strategy reveals truth. Strategy reveals truth. Yoda's eyes gleamed with something that might have been approval. Wise words, young Admiral. Though young in your case, perhaps not accurate is. I'm 26, Reinhardt said flatly. Supreme commander of my nation's military at 20. I learned early that age matters less than results. Yang nearly choked on his cold tea. 26? He'd known Reinhardt was young, but somehow hearing the specific number made it worse. Yang himself was 32 and felt ancient. Meanwhile, this golden-haired prodigy had conquered half a galaxy before he was old enough to rent a speeder on most civilized worlds. The Separatists employ droid armies, Obi-Wan continued, clearly trying to move past the uncomfortable questions. They've attacked civilian populations, committed war crimes, and their leadership includes representatives from the most ruthless corporate entities in the galaxy. The Trade Federation, the Banking Clan, the Techno Union. These aren't idealists seeking independence. They're oligarchs seeking power. And the Republic? Reinhardt asked coldly. Who leads it? Idealists or oligarchs? Another uncomfortable silence. The Republic is led by Supreme Chancellor Palpatine, Mace Windu said. A skilled politician who has worked tirelessly to hold our democracy together during this crisis. Without his leadership, how long has he been in office? Yang interrupted. And how many emergency powers has he accumulated? Nearly 4 years, Obi-Wan admitted. And yes, the Senate has granted him certain wartime authorities, but they're temporary measures to be relinquished when the war ends. Yang and Reinhardt exchanged a look. Both had studied enough history to know how that story ended. Temporary powers had a way of becoming permanent. Emergency measures had a way of outlasting emergencies. I see, Yang said quietly. So we have a conflict between an increasingly authoritarian republic led by a chancellor with emergency powers and a separatist movement backed by corporate interests and led by a fallen religious figure. Both sides claim to represent legitimate governance. Both sides employ massive armies. Neither side appears willing to negotiate. Does that about sum it up? You make it sound hopeless, Ki-Adi-Mundi said. I make it sound like every war I've ever studied, Yang corrected. Two sides convinced of their righteousness, locked in a death spiral that serves neither population's actual interests. The only winners are the weapons manufacturers and the politicians who use the conflict to expand their power. Cynical, Obi-Wan observed. Accurate, Yang replied. Show me a war where that isn't true, and I'll show you a war that's been mythologized beyond recognition. Reinhardt, however, was studying the holographic star charts the Jedi had displayed. Your strategic situation is abysmal. You're fighting defensively across 1,000 systems with no clear operational objectives beyond hold the line. Your enemy has interior lines of communication and can mass forces faster than you can respond. And your clone army, while apparently well-trained, is numerically finite while the separatist droids can be manufactured indefinitely. You're losing this war. Slowly, perhaps, but inevitably. The Jedi Council members bristled at the assessment, but none directly contradicted it. Which is precisely why we need allies, Mace Windu said. Your fleets represent significant military assets. Your tactical expertise could turn the tide of key battles. In exchange for your assistance, the Republic can provide resources, repairs, and access to our finest scientists to help you find a way home. Mercenary work, Reinhardt said, his lip curling with distaste. You want to hire us. We want to offer mutual benefit. Obi-Wan corrected diplomatically. No, Reinhardt said flatly. I don't fight for causes I don't believe in. And I certainly don't fight for governments I don't respect. From everything you've told me, Your republic is a corrupt bureaucracy held together by emergency powers and mystical warrior monks. Your enemy is corporate greed, wearing the mask of independence. Neither side deserves my loyalty." Yang winced. Reinhardt's brutal honesty was going to get them both thrown off the planet. But Yoda surprised him. The ancient Jedi Master nodded slowly, his ears drooping in what might have been sad acknowledgement. "Harsh words, Admiral von Lohengram speaks. But truth in them there is. Blind to our flaws, the Jedi have become. Seduced by power, the Senate has been. A reckoning, perhaps we deserve." Master Yoda, Mace Windu began. "No, Mace. Right, they are." Yoda's gaze turned to Yang. "And you, Admiral Wen Li? Share your companion's assessment, do you?" Yang set down his empty teacup with careful precision. "I think you're all trapped in a conflict engineered by someone smarter than any of you realize. The Separatists' grievances were legitimate, which means someone deliberately ensured those grievances weren't addressed through peaceful means. Someone wanted this war. The question is, who benefits?" "The Sith," Mace Windu said immediately. "Count Dooku serves a dark master, a Sith Lord we've yet to identify. They orchestrated this conflict to destroy the Jedi and the Republic. Then why are you playing along?" Yang asked. "If you know the war is a Sith plot, why fight it on their terms? Why not expose the manipulation, force a negotiated peace, remove the Sith's strategic foundation? Because the Separatists won't negotiate in good faith," Obi-Wan said. "We've tried. Dooku's master won't allow it, and because millions would die if we simply withdrew," Ki-Adi-Mundi added. "The Separatist droids would overrun Republic worlds. We fight to protect our citizens." Yang nodded slowly. "So, you're trapped. The moment you committed to military response, you gave the Sith exactly what they wanted. An endless conflict that exhausts the Jedi, corrupts the Republic, and justifies ever-expanding executive authority. You can't win, because winning isn't possible. The game is rigged." Then what would you do?" Mace Windu challenged. "If you're so certain we're making mistakes, what's your solution?" "I don't have one," Yang admitted. "Not yet. I'd need to study your political structures, analyze your military deployments, examine the economic foundations of the conflict, and most importantly, identify who this mysterious Sith Master is and what they actually want. Wars don't happen in a vacuum. They're fought to achieve specific political objectives. Once you understand your enemy's true objective, you can deny it to them. But first, you have to be willing to look past the obvious conflict and see the deeper game." Reinhardt had been studying the star charts with increasing focus. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the absolute certainty of a man who had never doubted his own genius. "Your Jedi are deployed incorrectly. You're using Force-sensitive warrior mystics as line commanders in a conventional war. It's like using a surgeon to fight as a frontline soldier, technically possible, but strategically wasteful. Your Jedi should be operating as special forces, infiltration, assassination, surgical strikes against high-value targets. Instead, you've made them generals commanding armies, which dilutes their unique advantages while exposing them to mass casualty scenarios they're philosophically unprepared to handle." The council chamber fell silent. Several Jedi looked deeply uncomfortable. Furthermore, Reinhardt continued, his finger tracing fleet positions on the hologram. "Your Republic Navy is spread so thin that you can't concentrate force anywhere effectively. You're trying to defend everything, which means you defend nothing well. Any competent strategist could choose their target, mass forces, and overwhelm your local defenses before reinforcements arrive. The fact that the Separatists haven't already done this suggests either extreme incompetence on their part, or," he paused, his ice blue eyes narrowing, "or they're deliberately prolonging the conflict rather than seeking decisive victory." "Why would they do that?" Obi-Wan asked. "Same reason your mysterious Sith Master would want it," Yang said. understanding flooding through him. Because the war itself is the objective, not winning it. As long as the conflict continues, both sides grant more power to their leadership, both militaries expand, both populations accept increasing restrictions on their freedom. The war doesn't need to be won. It just needs to continue until it's transformed both sides into something new, something more authoritarian. Yoda's walking stick tapped the floor 3 times, sharp as blaster fire. See clearly, you do. Feel the future's shape. You do not need the Force to understand. A trap, this war is, and caught in it, we all are. Not all of us, Reinhardt said. Yang Wen-Li and I owe this republic nothing. We owe the separatists nothing. We're not pieces on your board. We're not players in your rigged game. Then what will you do? Mace Windu asked. Sit in orbit while a galaxy burns? No, Yang said quietly. We'll do what we always do. We'll study the board, identify the real player, and find a way to flip the table. He stood, his movements tired but determined. But we won't be anyone's pawns, not the Republic's, not the Separatists, and certainly not some hidden Sith masters. If we fight, it will be on our terms, for objectives we choose. Then we find ourselves at an impasse, Ki Adimundi said. Perhaps, Reinhardt agreed. Or perhaps you simply need time to consider whether you want intelligent allies who question orders, or obedient servants who execute them without thought. I know which I'd prefer, but then, I've never been comfortable with blind obedience. He turned toward the exit, his cape sweeping dramatically. Yang followed, shooting an apologetic glance at Obi-Wan, who seemed the most reasonable of the group. As they left the council chamber, Yang heard Yoda's voice echoing behind them. Trouble, those two will be. Great trouble, or great salvation. Which one? The Force does not reveal. Outside, as they walked back toward the landing platform, Reinhardt spoke without looking at Yang. You realize we've just made enemies of the galaxy's most powerful military force. We've made it clear we won't be used. Yang corrected. There's a difference. Besides, they need us more than we need them. They'll negotiate. And if they don't, Yang smiled grimly. Then we'll do what we do best. Find the third option nobody else considered. Behind them, in the council chamber, the Jedi were already arguing about what to do with 2 military geniuses who refused to play by anyone's rules. Above them, in his office, Supreme Chancellor Palpatine watched the recorded footage of the meeting and smiled. Interesting, he murmured. Very interesting indeed. Count Dooku received the intelligence report in his private chambers on Sereno, and for the first time in many years, the elegant Sith Lord found himself genuinely intrigued. 2 fleets had appeared above Coruscant, powerful, advanced, commanded by men who had rejected the Jedi Council's overtures with a philosophical sophistication that suggested genuine strategic vision rather than mere arrogance. Reinhard von Lohengram and Yang Wen-Li, Dooku murmured, studying the holographic recordings his spies had transmitted. The golden-haired admiral spoke with the absolute conviction of nobility, while the tired-looking one with the perpetual teacup dismantled the Republic's narrative with surgical precision. Remarkable, his communicator chimed the private channel reserved for his master. Dooku activated it with practiced reverence, kneeling as the flickering hologram of Darth Sidious materialized. You've seen the reports, my apprentice? Yes, master. 2 displaced commanders from another galaxy. The Jedi failed to recruit them. Obside of call. The Jedi failed to recruit them. More than failed, Sidious corrected, his voice dripping with dark amusement. They identified the true nature of this conflict with remarkable speed. Dooku's expression remained carefully neutral, but internally he calculated. If his master viewed these newcomers as threats, he would be ordered to eliminate them. If Sidious saw opportunity, he would be ordered to recruit them. The question was which path served Dooku's own interests better. Shall I arrange their removal, master? No, I want you to meet with them, personally. Sidious leaned forward in his holographic form, his hood shadowing his features. The young one, Von Lohengram despises corruption and incompetence. He believes in meritocracy enforced by strength. That philosophy aligns more closely with Sith principles than Jedi platitudes. The other one, Wen Li, is a Democrat, but a cynical one. He sees the Republic's flaws clearly. Both men are brilliant tacticians who command absolute loyalty from their subordinates. You want them as allies. I want them off the board, Sidious corrected. But if they can be turned to serve our purposes, so much the better. At minimum, their presence complicates the Jedi's strategic calculations. At maximum, the Sith Lord's smile was audible. Two military geniuses, unbound by Force tradition, could accomplish what 100 Sith acolytes could not. They might even survive Order 66. Dooku absorbed the implication. His master planned to use these admirals as temporary assets, then discard them when the time came. Unless, of course, they proved valuable enough to keep. The Sith were always pragmatic about power. I will extend an invitation through appropriate channels. But Master, these men rejected the Jedi because they saw through the manipulation. No, Sidious agreed, which is why you won't try to manipulate them. You'll tell them the truth, or a version close enough to be credible. The Republic is corrupt. The Jedi are complicit. The war is designed to transform the galaxy's political structure. These are all facts they've already deduced. Simply confirm their suspicions and offer them something the Jedi couldn't. Honesty about the game being played. And if they refuse, then we eliminate them before they become problematic. But Dooku, try not to refuse too quickly. You were once a Jedi yourself. You saw the Order's hypocrisy and chose to leave. These admirals see the same corruption. They might appreciate hearing from someone who made a similar choice. The hologram flickered out, leaving Dooku alone with his thoughts. Offer truth as the lure. Appeal to their evident disdain for corruption. Present the separatist cause as genuinely opposed to the Republic's decay. It might even work. But Dooku had spent enough time studying warfare to recognize brilliant commanders when he saw them. Von Lohengram and Wen Li weren't mere tacticians. They were strategic thinkers who operated on a level that transcended individual battles. Men like that didn't become pawns easily. Still, it would be fascinating to try. 3 days later, Yang Wen Li was in his quarters aboard the Hyperion, reviewing the intelligence his staff had compiled about this galaxy's political situation, when Lieutenant Commander Greenhill entered with an expression of deep concern. "Sir, we've received a communication through an encrypted channel that should have been impossible for anyone in this galaxy to access." Yang set down his teacup, a habit he was maintaining religiously despite the inferior local tea supplies. Impossible channels being accessed usually means someone very smart or very well informed. What's the message? It's an invitation from Count Dooku. Yang's eyebrows rose. The separatist leader? The fallen Jedi the Council warned us about? The same. He requests a private meeting with both you and Admiral von Lohengram. Neutral location, everyone 2-3. Minimal security. Purely for discussion. Of course he does. Yang stood, stretching muscles that had grown stiff from too many hours studying reports. Contact von Lohengram's flagship. Ask if he's received the same invitation. My guess is yes. The confirmation came within minutes. Reinhardt had indeed received an identical message and had already decided to attend. Yang wasn't surprised. His rival would never pass up an opportunity to gather intelligence, especially from someone the Jedi had explicitly labeled as dangerous. The meeting location was a neutral space station in the Outer Rim, far from both Republic and Separatist core territories. Yang arrived first, accompanied only by Frederica and a small security detail. The station was old, its corridors bearing the wear of decades of use. But it was functional, and more importantly, genuinely neutral, operated by the Hutt cartel, who cared about profit more than politics. Reinhardt's shuttle docked 10 minutes later. The golden-haired admiral emerged with Paul von Oberstein at his side and surveyed the station with obvious distaste. Delightful venue. IBMN. IBMN. IBMMMM. IBMM. IBM. IBM. IBMM. IBMM. If we're betrayed and murdered here, at least we'll die in appropriately squalid surroundings. Your optimism is inspiring, Yang said dryly. Shall we see what the fallen Jedi wants? Count Dooku was waiting in a private conference room, standing by a viewport that showed the endless stars beyond. He cut an impressive figure, tall, aristocratic, silver beard, immaculately maintained. His curved lightsaber hilt hung at his belt like a statement of purpose. When he turned to face them, his expression showed genuine interest rather than the predatory calculation Yang had expected. Admiral von Lohengram, Admiral Wen Li, thank you for accepting my invitation. I understand you've had mixed experiences. With this galaxy's political leadership, the Jedi tried to recruit us as mercenaries, Reinhardt said bluntly. We declined. If you're about to make the same offer on behalf of the Separatists, you'll receive the same answer. I'm not here to recruit you, Dooku said calmly. I'm here to tell you the truth the Jedi wouldn't. Please, sit. This will take some time. Yang and Reinhardt exchanged glances, then took seats across from the Count. Oberstein and Frederica remained standing, hands near their weapons, watching for any sign of betrayal. Dooku poured wine from a crystalline decanter, an oddly civilized gesture in the grimy surroundings. The Jedi told you this war began because star systems sought independence and the Republic refused to allow it. That's true as far as it goes. What they didn't tell you is why the Republic refused. Taxation and corruption, Yang said. Standard imperial dynamics. The core worlds extract wealth from the periphery. The periphery rebels. The core uses force to maintain extraction rights. Perceptive, but incomplete. Dooku sipped his wine. The Republic has existed for over 25,000 years. It has survived countless secession movements, civil wars, and political crises. This time, however, something was different. Instead, they immediately militarized, purchasing a massive clone army that had been conveniently growing on Kamino for a decade. Created by a dead Jedi's order that nobody could verify, Reinhardt leaned forward. An army prepared in advance, suggesting foreknowledge of the conflict, or orchestration of it, Dooku agreed. I was once a Jedi Master. I sat on the council. I saw firsthand how the Order had become blind to its own corruption, how it served the Senate's interests rather than the Force's will. I left because I could no longer tolerate the hypocrisy. When the Separatist movement began, I joined them because their grievances were legitimate. And then, Yang prompted, because this is the part where you tell us how a legitimate independence movement became a droid army led by corporate oligarchs. Dooku's smile was thin. You don't miss much, do you? Yes. The Separatist cause has been compromised. The corporate entities that fund our military have their own agendas. The droid armies commit atrocities I never intended, and I serve a master whose ultimate goals remain opaque even to me. Then why are you still fighting? Reinhardt demanded. If you know your cause has been corrupted, why continue? Because the alternative is worse. Dooku set down his wine glass with deliberate care. The Republic is transforming into an empire. The Clone Wars are the mechanism of that transformation. Every emergency power the Senate grants to Chancellor Palpatine becomes permanent. Every restriction on civil liberties justified by military necessity becomes normalized. The Jedi, for all their talk of peace, they have become generals, commanding slave soldiers. Those clones are bred for obedience, their autonomy stripped before birth. This is not the Republic fighting to preserve democracy. This is democracy committing suicide while the Jedi hold its hand. The room fell silent. Yang studied Dooku's face, searching for deception and finding only bitter conviction. This was a man who had betrayed everything he once believed in and was still trying to convince himself it had been necessary. "You're telling us the war is a trap," Yang said quietly. "Both sides are being manipulated toward a predetermined outcome. The question is, by whom?" "The Sith," Dooku said simply. "An order of Force wielders who embrace passion and power, rather than the Jedi's sterile detachment. My master is a Sith Lord of considerable ability. He orchestrated this conflict to destroy the Jedi and transform the Republic into something new, something stronger. An empire," Reinhard said, his voice flat. "You're helping build an empire. I'm trying to ensure that when the empire comes, and it will come, Admiral, the Republic's death is inevitable. It will be tempered by the memory of legitimate resistance that some systems will remember. They fought for independence, even if they lost. That the new order will face opposition from day one, preventing it from becoming too totalitarian." Yang laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You're losing on purpose. You're fighting a war you know you can't win, committing atrocities to justify the Republic's military expansion, all while hoping that your principal defeat will inspire future resistance to the tyranny you're helping create. That's either brilliant or insane. I honestly can't tell which. Perhaps both," Dooku admitted. "But tell me, Admiral Wenli, you've fought for a democracy you knew was corrupt. You've watched politicians send soldiers to die for meaningless objectives. Did you ever consider that losing a war might serve a greater purpose than winning it?" The question hit closer than Yang wanted to admit. He had considered it. During the darkest moments of the Alliance-Empire War, he'd wondered if the Alliance's survival was worth the cost, if democracy defended by endless bloodshed was still democracy at all. Reinhard, however, showed no such introspection. "You disgust me. You're a brilliant man who has chosen to serve mediocrity and call it strategy. If you truly believed the Republic needed to be destroyed, you would fight to win, crush them utterly, and build something better from the ashes. Instead, you've become a puppet performing in a play written by someone else. You're not a revolutionary. You're a collaborator with delusions of martyrdom." Dooku's expression hardened. "And what would you do, young Admiral? If you found yourself in my position, I would kill my master, take control of the Separatist forces, and wage actual war against the Republic," Reinhard said without hesitation. "I would target corruption rather than civilians, assassinate the senators who profit from conflict, expose the Jedi's hypocrisy to their own citizens, and force the Republic to either reform or collapse under the weight of its own contradictions. I would fight to win, or I would not fight at all." "The Sith are not easily killed," Dooku said quietly. "My master's power exceeds mine." "Then you're already dead," Reinhard said with brutal finality. "You just haven't stopped moving yet." The silence that followed was broken by Yang's quiet voice. "You didn't invite us here to recruit us. You invited us to warn us. You wanted to make sure we understood the game being played before we chose our positions on the board." Dooku nodded slowly. "You're both brilliant strategists from outside this galaxy's ancient conflicts. You could change outcomes neither I nor the Jedi can predict. I wanted you to know what you'd be changing. The rest is your choice." "Then let me be clear about our choice," Yang said, standing. "We won't fight for your separatists. We won't fight for the Republic. And we certainly won't fight for your mysterious Sith master. But we will fight to expose this manipulation and give the people of this galaxy a chance to choose their own futures. If that makes us your enemies, so be it." Reinhard stood as well. "For once, Yang Wenli and I agree completely. This galaxy deserves better than being a game board for force-wielding manipulators. We're going to give it better. We're going to give it better, whether it wants it or not." Dooku smiled sadly. "Then I'm afraid we are enemies, gentlemen. Because the one thing my master will not tolerate is anyone disrupting his grand design. You've just painted targets on both your fleets. Let him try," Reinhard said coldly. "I've fought force wielders before." Yang blinked. "You have? You have?" "No," But how different can it be from fighting any other enemy? They bleed. They die. They make mistakes. The Force doesn't exempt them from the consequences of poor strategy. As they left the station, returning to their shuttles, Frederica spoke quietly to Yang. "Sir, we've made enemies of both sides now. The Jedi don't trust us. The Separatists will target us. What's our play?" Yang smiled grimly. "We do what we always do when the game is rigged, Frederica. We find the person rigging it and break their fingers." Rigging. 1. Mine. Rigging. Rigging. When the breaking in grimly. When the game is rigging. Lake not. Rigging it rigging. When the game is rigging. We find above them, in the vast darkness of space, 2 fleets hung in orbit, legendary commanders from another galaxy, about to wage war against an enemy who had orchestrated conflicts for 1,000 years. Darth Sidious, watching through his web of spies and informants, smiled in his office on Coruscant. "Let them try," he murmured. "It's been so long since I faced a genuine challenge." Yang Wenli's investigation began the way all his best campaigns did, with exhaustive, tedious research that made his subordinates question whether they'd joined a military fleet or a mobile library. He commandeered 3 conference rooms aboard the Hyperion, filled them with holographic displays, and started mapping the Clone Wars with the methodical precision of a man searching for patterns in chaos. "The clone army was ordered 10 years ago," he explained to his senior staff, pointing at a timeline projection, "by a Jedi master named Sifo Dyas, who died shortly after placing the order. The Jedi Council claims they had no knowledge of this order. The Kaminoans, the cloners, say they were working under Jedi authorization. Someone is lying, or someone removed records, or both." Lieutenant Commander Frederica Greenhill studied the data with a frown. "The timing is too convenient. The army finishes maturation just as the Separatist crisis reaches critical mass. That's not coincidence." "No, it's not," Yang agreed. "Which means someone knew this war was coming a decade in advance and prepared accordingly. The question is, who benefits from a republic with a massive, standing army?" The Chancellor offered Rear Admiral Fisher. "Emergency powers require emergencies. A military requires threats to justify it." Yang nodded slowly. "Palpatine has been Chancellor for 13 years now. Pleased to 4. He was elected on a platform of fighting corruption, then was granted emergency powers when the war began, and has since accumulated authority that would have been unthinkable under his predecessors. He's popular, effective, and absolutely positioned to transform the Republic into whatever he wants it to become." "You think he's the Sith Lord Dooku mentioned?" Frederica asked. "I think someone with access to Jedi resources, Senate authority, and decade-long strategic planning is pulling strings on both sides of this conflict. Whether that's Palpatine or someone using him as a proxy, I don't know yet, but the pattern is clear. Centralize power, eliminate opposition, transform democratic institutions into authoritarian structures while maintaining the appearance of legitimacy." "So what do we do?" Fisher asked. Yang sipped his tea. He'd finally found a local blend that didn't taste like recycled coolant. "We do what Dooku said we would. We disrupt the grand design. But carefully, if we're right about Palpatine, he's been orchestrating this for over a decade. He has contingencies for everything. We need to make ourselves too valuable to eliminate and too unpredictable to control." Meanwhile, aboard the Brunhild, Reinhard von Lohengram was taking a characteristically more direct approach. He had summoned his senior admirals and laid out a strategy that made half of them pale. "We're going to win a battle for the Republic," Reinhard announced. "A major engagement, something that shifts strategic momentum and forces both sides to take us seriously." "Sir," Admiral Wolfgang Mittermeier said carefully, "didn't we just tell both the Jedi and the Separatists that we wouldn't fight for either side?" "We're not fighting for the Republic," Reinhard corrected. "We're fighting for ourselves, to demonstrate our capabilities, to prove that we're not merely displaced refugees, but a force that can alter the balance of power in this galaxy. Once we've established that, we can negotiate from a position of strength rather than as supplicants begging for scraps of information. And which battle did you have in mind? Admiral Oscar von Ruenthal asked, his mismatched eyes gleaming with interest. Reinhard pulled up a star chart. The Republic is about to lose Kashyyyk, the Wookiee homeworld. Separatist forces under General Grievous are massing for an invasion. The Republic fleet assigned to defend it is undermanned and outgunned. They'll lose, the Wookiees will be enslaved, and the Separatists will gain a strategically positioned world in the Mid-Rim. And we're going to prevent that? We're going to annihilate the Separatist fleet so thoroughly that both sides are forced to recalculate every strategic assessment they've made about us, Reinhard said with a cold smile. Then we're going to make it clear that we didn't do it for the Republic, the Jedi, or democracy. We did it because we chose to, because we could, and because anyone who underestimates us will learn the cost of that mistake. Paul von Oberstein, ever pragmatic, raised the obvious objection. This will make us targets. Both sides will want to either recruit or eliminate us. They want that already, Reinhard countered. But right now, they see us as unknown variables, potentially useful, potentially dangerous, but not immediately relevant to their strategic calculations. After Kashyyyk, they'll see us as kings on the board, players who must be accounted for in every plan. That's when we'll have real leverage. It's risky, Mittermeier said. All great strategies are, Reinhard replied. But the alternative is to sit in orbit while Yang Wenli plays detective, hoping he finds evidence before someone decides we're too troublesome to keep alive. I prefer to make our value undeniable through action, rather than words. The plan was set. The Brunhild and its fleet would depart for Kashyyyk within the day. Yang, when informed of Reinhard's intentions, nearly choked on his tea. He's going to do what? Frederica repeated the message with barely concealed amusement. Admiral von Lohengram has transmitted his intention to defend Kashyyyk against the Separatist invasion. He invites you to join him if you wish to witness how real military genius operates. Those were his exact words. Those were his exact words. Yang groaned and set down his cup before he could drop it. That arrogant, brilliant, self-destructive. He trailed off, running calculations in his head. Reinhard was baiting him. The golden-haired prodigy knew Yang couldn't resist the challenge, couldn't let Reinhard score a major victory alone, couldn't pass up the opportunity to study Separatist tactics firsthand. Damn him, Yang muttered. Damn him for being right. Frederica, prepare the fleet. We're going to Kashyyyk to support Admiral von Lohengram, to make sure his spectacular victory doesn't turn into a spectacular disaster, Yang corrected. Reinhard is brilliant, but he's also 26 and convinced of his own invincibility. Someone needs to watch his back. And apparently, that someone is me. The news reached the Jedi Temple within hours. Obi-Wan Kenobi brought it to the Council with a mixture of relief and concern. They're going to defend Kashyyyk, both fleets. They've transmitted their intentions to Republic Command and are requesting tactical coordination. Mace Windu's expression was guarded. After they refused to ally with us, now they offer aid? Not aid, Yoda corrected. A demonstration this is. Prove their worth. They seek to. Show us what they can do, unbound by our command structure. It's also an opportunity, Obi-Wan pointed out. We were about to lose Kashyyyk. General Grievous is a formidable commander. If these admirals can actually defeat him, then we'll owe them a debt, Mace Windu finished, which gives them leverage over the Republic. This could be dangerous. More dangerous than losing Kashyyyk? Ki-Adi-Mundi asked. The council fell silent. And if these displaced admirals wanted to prove themselves, the Jedi could hardly refuse to let them try. Coordinate with them we will, Yoda decided. But watch carefully. We must. Great power these admirals wield. Which side they truly serve, we still do not know. The transmission reached Count Dooku on Sereno with considerably more alarm. General Grievous was one of his most effective commanders, leading one of the largest separatist fleets assembled since the war began. The invasion of Kashyyyk was meant to be a crushing blow to Republic morale and a source of slave labor for the war effort. Now 2 unknown fleets, commanded by tactical geniuses, were moving to intercept. Dooku contacted his master immediately. They're intervening at Kashyyyk. This could compromise the entire operation. Darth Sidious appeared in holographic form, his expression thoughtful rather than angry. Let them. Grievous needs to be tested against competent opposition, and I want to see how these admirals fight. Their tactics, their decision-making under pressure, whether they're truly as brilliant as they believe themselves to be. And if they destroy Grievous, then we'll know they're dangerous enough to require elimination, Sidious said simply. But I don't think they will. Grievous has 4 times their combined fleet strength and intimate knowledge of this galaxy's tactical doctrine. These admirals may be geniuses in their own reality, but they're novices here. This will be their education in the costs of arrogance. You underestimate them, Master. Perhaps, Sidious conceded. But even if they win, they'll have committed themselves to the Republic's defense. They'll have taken a side, and once they're invested in this conflict, they become predictable. Predictable enemies can be manipulated, isolated, destroyed. Dooku bowed, though doubt gnawed at him. He had met both admirals face to face, looked into their eyes. Neither man had the gaze of someone who could be easily manipulated, but his master had orchestrated conflicts for decades. If Sidious believed he could control them, perhaps he was right, or perhaps the Sith Lord had finally encountered opponents who operated on his level. The journey to Kashyyyk took 3 days at maximum hyperspace speed. Yang spent the time studying every scrap of intelligence about General Grievous, the cyborg commander of the separatist droid armies. What he learned was troubling. He's not a strategist, Yang explained to his staff. He's a tactical executioner. Grievous wins through overwhelming force, aggressive maneuvers, and personal combat prowess. He's killed dozens of Jedi in single combat, which suggests either tremendous skill or tremendous luck. Probably both. How do we counter that? Frederica asked. By not fighting the battle he expects, Yang said simply. Grievous is used to facing Republic fleets that fight defensively, trying to minimize losses. He breaks them through relentless pressure and superior numbers. But we're not a Republic fleet. We don't play by their rules. Aboard the Brunhild, Reinhard was conducting similar analysis with very different conclusions. Grievous is a blunt instrument, he told his admirals. Effective against weak opposition, but predictable. He'll mass his forces for a direct assault on Kashyyyk's orbital defenses, expecting the Republic fleet to either retreat or be destroyed. He won't expect a flanking assault from an enemy fleet using tactics he's never encountered. We'll hit him from an unexpected vector? Mittermeier asked. We'll hit him from 6 unexpected vectors simultaneously, Reinhard corrected. Divide our forces into strike groups, coordinate through tight beam communications, and dismantle his fleet 1 squadron at a time while he's still trying to understand what we're doing. By the time Grievous realizes we're not following standard Republic tactics, he'll have lost 30% of his fleet. It was a brilliantly aggressive plan. It was also exactly the kind of plan that could backfire catastrophically if anything went wrong. But that was Reinhard von Lohengram in a nutshell, genius, teetering on the edge of disaster, convinced that his brilliance would always pull him back from the brink. Young, monitoring Reinhard's fleet movements through long-range sensors, recognized the setup immediately. He's going to split his forces, Young said with a sigh. He's going to divide his fleet into multiple strike groups and attack from every direction at once. It's tactically brilliant and strategically insane. If Grievous adapts faster than Reinhard expects, those scattered groups will be destroyed piecemeal. Should we coordinate with him? Fisher asked. Yang smiled grimly. No. We're going to do something Reinhard won't expect. We're going to let him spring his trap, draw Grievous's attention, and then we're going to hit the Separatists where they're actually vulnerable, which is their command ship. Grievous leads from the front. He's aggressive, personal, dramatic, which means if we can identify his flagship and cripple it, the entire Separatist fleet will lose coordination. Droid armies need command signals, Sever those signals and they become exponentially less effective. It was the kind of elegant solution that won wars without glorifying the commander who implemented it, which was perfect for young Wenli, who had never wanted glory in the first place. The fleets exited hyperspace above Kashyyyk simultaneously. Reinhardt's Brunhild and its battle group on one vector, Yang's Hyperion on another, and the massive separatist armada already in position to begin its invasion. General Grievous, aboard his flagship Invisible Hand, received the sensor reports with mechanical curiosity. 2 unknown fleets, unfamiliar configurations, no Republic transponder codes. Interesting. Analysis, he demanded in his rattling mechanical voice. Unknown origin, General. They appeared to coordinate their emergence with Republic forces, suggesting alliance. Combined strength approximately 1/3 of our fleet. Grievous laughed a horrible coughing sound. Then they'll die quickly. Launch all fighters. Prepare to engage. I want prisoners from their command ships. I'm curious to see what kind of fools challenge me with such pathetic numbers. In his command chair aboard the Brunhild, Reinhard von Lohengram watched the separatist fleet begin its deployment and smiled. All groups, execute Formation Delta 7. Time to show this galaxy what real warfare looks like. Quote, in his own chair aboard the Hyperion, Yang Wenli finished his tea and set the cup aside with steady hands. Frederica, signal all ships. We're going hunting. Target, Grievous's flagship. Let Reinhard have his glory. We'll settle for the victory. The Battle of Kashyyyk was about to begin, and neither side knew they were playing a game designed by 2 men who had never lost. The opening moments of the Battle of Kashyyyk unfolded with a violence that shocked even veteran Republic commanders watching from the surface. Reinhardt's fleet didn't advance in the traditional wall formation that dominated Republic naval doctrine. Instead, the Brunhild and its battle groups fragmented into 6 distinct strike forces, each moving at maximum sublight speed along vectors that made no immediate tactical sense. General Grievous watched the maneuver with mechanical curiosity. They're dividing their forces. Foolish. All squadrons, prepare to engage the central group. We'll destroy them individually, but the central group wasn't where Reinhard was. The Brunhild had taken the northern strike force, accelerating into a high orbital arc that would bring it down on the separatist fleet's exposed flank. Meanwhile, Admiral Mittermeier led the southern group in a feint toward the planet's equator, drawing droid fighters like insects to flame. Admiral Ruenthal, begin your attack run, Reinhard commanded, his voice carrying across the tight beam communications network that connected his scattered forces. Make them think you're the main attack. Ruenthal's group screamed into weapons range, and the space between fleets erupted in a storm of turbo-laser fire and missile contrails. The separatist destroyers rotated to meet the threat, their droid crews executing defensive protocols with mechanical precision. For 90 seconds, it appeared to be a straightforward engagement. One Republic-allied group trading fire with a superior force. Then Ruenthal's ships banked hard, executed a coordinated hyperspace microjump that brought them 5,000 kilometers away, and left behind a minefield of delayed detonation torpedoes that tore through 3 separatist cruisers. What Grievous began, but the next strike group was already hitting from the opposite vector. This was warfare, as Reinhard had perfected it in his own galaxy. Rapid maneuver, devastating precision strikes, enemy confusion exploited before recovery was possible. Each strike group hit hard, withdrew before the separatists could concentrate fire, and left chaos in its wake. Command ships issued orders to squadrons that no longer existed. The separatist fleet, designed for overwhelming frontal assault, found itself fighting a ghost that struck from every direction and vanished before counterattack was possible. Aboard the Invisible Hand, Grievous's mechanical fingers crushed the arm of his command chair. Focus all firepower on the next group that emerges. I don't care about the others. Destroy one completely. It was the right tactical decision. Eliminate one strike group entirely. Force the enemy to commit reserves. Restore order through decisive action. Grievous had survived hundreds of battles through aggressive, overwhelming violence. He would apply the same principle here. which was exactly what Reinhardt had expected him to do. Admiral Wallen's group is taking concentrated fire, Oberstein reported. They're in danger of being destroyed. Maintain the attack pattern, Reinhardt ordered coldly. Wallen knew the risks. If he can't break contact, that's a failure of execution, not strategy. But even as he spoke, Reinhardt was already adjusting. Now the real assault could begin. All remaining groups converge on the following coordinates. Target the Separatist command ship. Maximum firepower. This ends now. While Reinhardt orchestrated his devastating assault, Yang Wen-li was conducting an entirely different battle. The Hyperion and its accompanying vessels hadn't engaged the main Separatist fleet at all. Instead, they'd positioned themselves in Kashyyyk's upper atmosphere, using the planet's magnetic field to mask their energy signatures, while Yang studied the battlefield with the patience of a master strategist. Sir, Admiral von Lohengram's forces are taking casualties, Frederica reported. One of his strike groups is in serious trouble. He knew that would happen, Yang said calmly, watching the tactical displays. He's sacrificing pawns to position his knights. It's effective, but brutal. Reinhardt has never valued individual lives as highly as he should. And our role in this? Yang smiled slightly. We're going to win the battle, while Reinhardt wins the glory. Watch Grievous's command ship. See how it's positioning itself to support the squadrons targeting Wallen's group? Grievous leads from the front. He's moving his flagship into weapons range to personally oversee the destruction of what he thinks is a critical enemy formation, which makes it vulnerable, which makes it accessible, Yang corrected. Frederica, signal all ships. Emergency power to engines. We're coming up from the planet's atmosphere at maximum acceleration. Target coordinates transmitted. All weapons on my command. The Hyperion and its battle group erupted from Kashyyyk's cloud layer, like predators from deep water. They'd been invisible on Separatist sensors, masked by planetary interference, positioned perfectly below the invisible hand's defensive arc. Yang had spent 40 minutes analyzing Grievous's command patterns, identifying the exact moment the cyborg general would be too focused on Reinhardt's forces to notice a secondary threat. This was that moment. All ships fire. The concentrated barrage caught the invisible hand with its shields oriented toward Reinhardt's converging strike groups. Turbo laser batteries designed to punch through capital ship armor hammered into the Separatist flagship's exposed underbelly. Torpedo spreads found vulnerable engine clusters. And most critically, Yang's ships targeted not the ship itself but its communications arrays, the antennae and relay stations that connected Grievous to his droid fleet. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Across the battlefield, droid fighters suddenly lost coordination. Vulture, droids that had been executing complex attack patterns, began flying in predictable circles. Tri-fighters ceased their aggressive maneuvers and reverted to basic defensive protocols. The Separatist fleet didn't collapse, but it became exponentially less effective, like a body whose nervous system had been partially severed. Aboard the Invisible Hand, alarms screamed and damage reports flooded in faster than Grievous's tactical officers could process them. Communications are down. We've lost contact with 60% of the fleet. Shields at 12%. Multiple hull breaches on decks 7 through 15. Grievous roared in mechanical fury and ignited his 4 lightsabers. A terrifying display that did absolutely nothing to address the tactical situation. Who attacked us? Where did they come from? Unknown ships, General. They emerged from the planet's atmosphere. Impossible, our sensors would have detected. But Grievous cut himself off. Obviously, it wasn't impossible, because it had happened. Someone had outmaneuvered him. Someone had used the planet itself as cover while he focused on the more obvious threat. Someone had played him like a novice. The realization sent a cold fury through Grievous's processors. He was the supreme commander of the Separatist military. He had killed Jedi Masters. He had crushed Republic fleets. He did not get outmaneuvered by unknown commanders in unfamiliar ships. All remaining forces converge on that fleet. I want them destroyed, but it was too late. With their communications disrupted and their command ship crippled, the Separatist forces couldn't execute coordinated maneuvers. Droid captains fell back on pre-programmed defensive behaviors that Reinhardt's strike groups exploited mercilessly, and Yang's fleet had already withdrawn to a safe distance, maintaining precise sensor locks on the invisible hand while staying just outside effective weapons range. Reinhardt recognized Yang's maneuver immediately and felt a surge of grudging admiration mixed with irritation. Of course, Yang would go for the elegant solution rather than the glorious one. Of course, he would cripple enemy command and control rather than engaging in spectacular ship-to-ship combat. It was infuriatingly effective and completely characteristic of the man. All groups, press the attack, Reinhardt ordered. The enemy is disorganized. We end this now. What followed was less a battle than an execution. Separatist ships, operating without centralized coordination, fell prey to Reinhardt's strike groups one by one. Droid fighters flew predictable patterns that made them easy targets for experienced pilots. Capital ships found themselves isolated and overwhelmed by concentrated fire from multiple vectors. General Grievous, watching his fleet disintegrate around him, made the decision that had kept him alive through countless battles. He retreated. The invisible hand, still functional despite heavy damage, punched through the encircling forces and made the jump to hyperspace, along with whatever ships could follow. He left behind dozens of disabled vessels, thousands of destroyed droid fighters, and the burning wreckage of what should have been an easy victory. As the last Separatist ships fled, the battlefield fell silent, except for the occasional explosion of dying vessels and the crackle of electromagnetic discharge from damaged power systems. Aboard the Brunhild, Reinhardt stood before his view screen and allowed himself a small smile of satisfaction. They had won, decisively, dramatically, against an enemy that had outnumbered them 4-1. The Republic would have to acknowledge their capabilities now. The Separatists would have to treat them as serious threats. And most importantly, they had proven that force-wielding mysticism meant nothing against superior tactics and flawless execution. Aboard the Hyperion, Yang finished reviewing the casualty reports and felt the familiar weight of command settle over him. Another 41 injured across various ships. Acceptable losses in military terms. 73 funerals in human terms. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the surface, Frederica announced. The Wookiees are requesting permission to send a delegation. They want to thank us personally. Tell them we appreciate the gesture. But we were just passing through, Yang said quietly. Then he reconsidered. The Wookiees were the ones who'd been saved. They deserved more than a dismissive response. Actually, tell them we'd be honored to receive their delegation. And Frederica, make sure our ships provide medical assistance to any wounded Republic personnel in orbit. We won the battle. The least we can do is help with the aftermath. The transmission from Reinhardt arrived minutes later, and Yang couldn't help but smile at the golden-haired Admiral's predictable competitiveness. An adequate performance, Yang Wenli. Though I notice you spent most of the battle hiding in the atmosphere, while my forces engaged the enemy directly. I prefer to think of it as strategic positioning, Yang replied. But you're right. You did most of the fighting. I just crippled their command structure and ensured your victory. Hardly worth mentioning. Even through the holographic transmission, Yang could see Reinhardt's jaw tighten. We'll call it a draw. For now. Generous of you, Yang said, though I should point out that Grievous escaped, which means he'll be back, probably with reinforcements and a much better understanding of our capabilities. Let him come, Reinhardt said dismissively. Next time, we'll destroy him completely. Next time, we might not have the element of surprise, Yang countered. Next time, both sides will know we're here and what we can do. That makes us targets, Reinhardt. Very high-value targets. Good, Reinhardt said. I prefer enemies who take me seriously. It makes victory more meaningful. The transmission ended, and Yang leaned back in his command chair with a sigh. They'd won the battle. They'd proven their capabilities. They'd made themselves indispensable to the Republic and a serious threat to the Separatists, which meant they'd done exactly what Dooku had warned them against. They defended a Republic world against separatist invasion. In the eyes of this galaxy's political powers, that made them Republic allies, whether they wanted to be or not. Frederica, Yang said quietly, have our intelligence officers start monitoring all communications with extra attention. We just made ourselves visible to both sides of this conflict. Someone is going to try to kill us now. I'd like to know who and when before they succeed. In his office on Coruscant, Supreme Chancellor Palpatine reviewed the battle reports from Kashyyyk with an expression that would have been unreadable to anyone who didn't know him. But Darth Sidious, behind the mask of the Chancellor, was furious. These admirals had done the impossible. They defeated Grievous in open combat with inferior numbers. They disrupted months of careful planning. They'd proven that non-Force-sensitive commanders could achieve results that had eluded the Jedi. Worse, they'd done it without asking permission, without coordinating with Republic Command, without placing themselves under anyone's authority. They were independent operators who had just demonstrated they could alter the course of the war through their own initiative. Variables. Unpredictable, brilliant, dangerous variables in an equation that Sidious had spent decades balancing perfectly. Lord Tyrannus, he said into his private communicator, using Dooku's Sith title. We need to discuss our displaced admirals. They've become a problem that requires immediate attention. End quote. Replier 17-0, 217 of Minals, one time any well. Werbinger Plier 17 of Minals, one time any well. In quoting of Minals on Sereno, Count Dooku received the message and closed his eyes briefly. He'd warned them. He'd told them what would happen if they disrupted his master's plans. Now they would learn the hard way that the Sith did not tolerate interference. And in the Jedi Temple, Master Yoda sat in meditation and felt the Force ripple with new currents, paths branching where before there had been only one inevitable road. Something significant. Whether that change was for better or worse, even the Force could not yet reveal. The Republic's gratitude manifested in ways both expected and unwelcome. Within 24 hours of the Battle of Kashyyyk, Yang and Reinhard found themselves inundated with official communications, commendations from the Senate, invitations to strategic planning sessions, requests for tactical consultations, and most concerning of all, a personal invitation from Supreme Chancellor Palpatine to attend a private dinner at his residence. Yang read the invitation 3 times, searching for hidden meanings in every word. Away from the Jedi, suspicious. Frederica agreed, though refusing might be more dangerous than accepting. Everything about this man is suspicious, Yang said, pulling up the intelligence files his staff had compiled on Palpatine. He's been Chancellor for 13 years. That alone violates several constitutional norms the Republic supposedly holds sacred. He's accumulated emergency powers that effectively make him a dictator in all but name. He's charismatic, politically brilliant, and according to every source we've found, completely devoted to preserving democracy. Yang's tone made clear what he thought of that last claim. You think he's the Sith Lord. I think he's either the Sith Lord, working for the Sith Lord, or being manipulated by the Sith Lord, Yang said. Any of those options makes him extremely dangerous. But we can't prove anything yet. And refusing to meet with the Republic's leader after we just saved one of their worlds would be politically disastrous. Aboard the Brunhild, Reinhard was having a similar conversation with considerably less patience. A dinner invitation, he said flatly, as if the words themselves offended him. He wants to wine and dine us like we're politicians seeking favor, rather than military commanders who just saved his republic from a humiliating defeat. It's a gesture of respect, Oberstein pointed out, and an opportunity to study him directly. You wanted to understand this galaxy's power structures. Meeting the man who effectively controls the Republic gives you that opportunity. Or it's a trap, Reinhard countered. Yang Wenli is right to be suspicious. This entire war feels orchestrated. Someone with Palpatine's political acumen doesn't just stumble into absolute power through a convenient series of crises. He either created those crises or he's the luckiest man in galactic history. I don't believe in luck. Then attend the dinner and observe, Oberstein suggested. Watch how he interacts with Yang Wen-li. Study his reactions when challenged. You've always been an excellent judge of character, Admiral. Use that skill here, Reinhard considered, then nodded sharply. Very well, but I'm bringing a full security detail. If this is an assassination attempt, I'll paint his private residence with blood before I die. How diplomatic, Oberstein murmured. The dinner was scheduled for 3 days later, which gave both admirals time to conduct reconnaissance, study Palpatine's public appearances, and prepare contingencies. Yang spent the time building a psychological profile. Reinhard spent it planning escape routes and kill zones. Both approaches were, in their way, equally valid. The Chancellor's private residence was located in the Senate District, a towering structure of elegant architecture that managed to be both impressive and understated. A balance that Yang recognized as deliberate. Palpatine wanted to project power without ostentation, authority without arrogance. It was the image of a reluctant leader burdened by duty, rather than an ambitious politician hungry for control, which, of course, made Yang more suspicious. They arrived separately but were shown into the dining room simultaneously. Another calculated gesture, Yang noted. Palpatine wanted to observe their interaction as much as converse with them individually. The Chancellor himself was exactly as Yang had expected from the holographic recordings. Elderly but vigorous, grandfatherly in appearance but sharp-eyed, dressed in robes that suggested simplicity while being made of obviously expensive materials. His smile was warm and genuine seeming, reaching his eyes in a way that most politicians never managed. Admiral von Lohengrin, Admiral Wen-li, thank you for accepting my invitation. Please, sit. I've had my staff prepare a meal featuring cuisine from across the Republic. I thought you might enjoy sampling the galaxy's diversity. Reinhard sat with the rigid posture of military formality. Yang settled into his chair with the casual comfort of a man who'd attended too many official dinners and learned to treat them as endurance exercises. You honor us, Chancellor, Yang said, noting that Palpatine had positioned himself at the head of the table, subtle dominance through seating arrangement. Though I admit we're curious why the Republic's leader would take personal interest in 2 displaced commanders. Displaced? Palpatine smiled. My dear Admiral, you've just saved Kashyyyk from invasion and demonstrated tactical brilliance that frankly embarrassed some of our finest military minds. I'd hardly call you merely displaced. You're valuable allies who arrived at a critical moment in our history. We're not allies, Reinhard said bluntly. We helped defend Kashyyyk because we chose to, not because we've sworn allegiance to your republic. Of course, Palpatine said smoothly, not even slightly offended by Reinhard's tone. I wouldn't presume to claim your loyalty without earning it. But surely, you understand that your actions, however independent, have consequences in our political landscape. The Senate is already debating how to officially recognize your contribution. Some senators want to grant you honorary citizenship. Others want to recruit your fleets formally into Republic service. And you? Yang asked. Palpatine's smile widened slightly. I want to understand you. 2 brilliant commanders from another galaxy, carrying philosophies and tactics foreign to our conflicts. You, Admiral von Lohengrin, believe in meritocratic autocracy, rule by the strong and capable. And you, Admiral Wen-li, defend democracy despite recognizing its flaws. You're opposites in ideology, yet similar in competence. I find that fascinating. You've been researching us, Reinhard observed, his eyes narrowing. I've been paying attention, Palpatine corrected. The Jedi Council shared their recordings of your initial meeting. I found your philosophical debate remarkably insightful. It's rare to encounter men who can articulate their beliefs with such clarity while respecting opposing viewpoints. Yang felt warning bells chiming in his head. Palpatine was too smooth, too charming, too perfectly calibrated to appeal to both their egos, while seeming to flatter neither excessively. This was a master manipulator at work, and Yang had the uncomfortable feeling they were already several moves behind in a game they hadn't realized they were playing. The first course arrived a delicate soup from Naboo, Palpatine's home planet. The Chancellor served them personally, another calculated gesture of humility that immediately put the guest at ease while reinforcing the host's magnanimity. "I understand you've been investigating the war's origins," Palpatine said casually, as if discussing the weather. "Admiral Wen Li's staff has been accessing Republic historical archives quite extensively, researching the clone army's creation, the separatist movement's formation, the political transformations that preceded the conflict." Yang's hand stilled briefly on his soup spoon. They'd been careful, using diplomatic credentials the Republic had granted them, accessing only public records. But of course, Palpatine would know. A man who had orchestrated a galactic war would certainly monitor who was investigating that war's origins. "We like to understand the conflicts we involve ourselves in," Yang said carefully. The Jedi presented the war as a straightforward struggle between democracy and tyranny. Our experience suggests most wars are considerably more complex. "Wise perspective," Palpatine agreed. "And what have your investigations revealed?" It was a test. Yang could feel it. Palpatine wanted to know how much they'd discovered, how close they were to understanding the true nature of the conflict. He could lie, claim they'd found nothing significant, or he could be honest and see how the Chancellor reacted. Yang chose a middle path truth wrapped in uncertainty. "We've found inconsistencies. The clone army ordered by a dead Jedi that nobody authorized. The separatist movement's legitimate grievances ignored until violence became inevitable. Emergency powers granted during crisis that somehow never get relinquished. It suggests either catastrophic governmental incompetence or deliberate manipulation. We haven't determined which." Palpatine nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. "You're not wrong to be suspicious. The Republic's government has made numerous mistakes over the centuries. Corruption, bureaucratic paralysis, an inability to address systemic problems before they metastasize into violence. These are institutional failures that shame us all. When I became Chancellor, I promised to reform these broken systems. But reform during peacetime is nearly impossible. Entrenched interests resist change. Only crisis creates opportunities for meaningful transformation." End quote. "Convenient then that you've had so many crises," Reinhard said coldly. "Reinhard." Palpatine's expression didn't change, but Yang saw something flicker in his eyes: approval, respect, recognition that Reinhard had just openly accused him of engineering the war. "Convenient for reform, perhaps," Palpatine said mildly. "Tragic for the millions who've died in the fighting. I assure you, Admiral, I take no pleasure in this war. Every casualty report that crosses my desk is a personal failure. But we must see this conflict through to its conclusion. Half measures will only prolong the suffering. A measure will get bitter long. Will get bitter long. And in mon lawn. And in mon. And mon lawn. And mon lawn." "And what does conclusion look like?" Yang asked. "Victory over the separatists? Their complete surrender? Or something else?" "Peace," Palpatine said simply. "Palpatine. However, it must be achieved. If the separatists lay down their arms and return to the Republic, we'll welcome them. If they refuse, we'll defeat them militarily and rebuild their systems under Republic governance. Either path leads to the same destination: a galaxy united under democratic principles, safe from the threat of endless fragmentation and civil war." Yang noticed the phrasing. United under democratic principles wasn't the same as remaining a democracy. It was the kind of linguistic sleight of hand that politicians used when they wanted to say one thing while technically saying another. Reinhard noticed too. "You speak of democracy, but you wield autocratic power, emergency authorities that make you functionally a dictator. How do you reconcile that contradiction? Easily, Palpatine said, meeting Reinhardt's challenging stare without flinching. Temporary autocracy to preserve permanent democracy. Sometimes a system must be saved from itself. The Republic's democratic processes were too slow, too divided to respond effectively to the separatist threat. If I had waited for Senate committees and constitutional debates, we'd have lost 20 systems before taking any action. So yes, I accepted emergency powers. And yes, I've used them aggressively. But always with the ultimate goal of returning this republic to democratic governance once the crisis passes. And if the crisis never passes? Yang asked quietly. If there's always another threat, another emergency that requires your continued authority? Palpatine smiled sadly. Then I will have failed as both a leader and a democrat. I pray that doesn't happen, Admiral. But I've learned that the galaxy is a dangerous place. Peace is always temporary. Vigilance must be eternal. The main course arrived, and the conversation shifted to less charged topics: the diversity of Republic worlds, the logistics of governing thousands of star systems, the cultural achievements that had flourished during periods of stability. Palpatine was an excellent conversationalist, knowledgeable without being pedantic, interested without being intrusive, which made him even more dangerous, in Yang's estimation. Tyrants who appeared as monsters were easy to oppose. Tyrants who appeared as grandfatherly statesmen, burdened by duty, were exponentially more effective. Over dessert, a frozen delicacy from Alderaan, Palpatine finally revealed his true purpose for the dinner. I want to make you an offer, he said. Not a demand, not an expectation, but a genuine proposal. The Republic needs commanders of your caliber, not as subordinates, but as independent advisors with full access to strategic planning and military resources. You would maintain your own fleets, operate according to your own tactical judgments, and receive whatever support you need to achieve your primary goal: finding a way home to your own galaxy. In exchange for? Reinhardt asked, his tone making clear he expected a steep price. Your continued assistance in critical battles, Palpatine said simply. When the Republic faces existential threats, situations like Kashyyyk, where defeat would mean catastrophic loss of life, I would ask you to intervene. Not as Republic officers following orders, but as Allied commanders pursuing shared interests. You get resources and scientific support for your journey home. We get access to tactical brilliance that has already proven decisive. Yang had to admit it was a clever offer. It provided resources they genuinely needed without demanding they compromise their independence. And most importantly, it made them assets Palpatine could monitor and, if necessary, control. We'll need to discuss this, Yang said. It's a generous offer, but it's also a significant commitment. We'd be tying ourselves to the Republic's military efforts for the foreseeable future. Of course, Palpatine said graciously. Take all the time you need, but I hope you'll consider it seriously. The Republic has many enemies, Admiral Wen Li, and I suspect you've already attracted the attention of some very dangerous ones. The implied threat was barely veiled. Accept our offer and receive our protection, or refuse and face those dangers alone. As they left the Chancellor's residence an hour later, Reinhardt and Yang walked in silence to their waiting shuttles. He's the Sith Lord, I'm certain of it, agreed, Reinhardt said. The way he talked about peace through unity, autocracy, to preserve democracy, those are the rationalizations of a man who's already decided to transform the Republic into an empire. He's just waiting for the right moment. And we just agreed to have dinner with him like civilized people, Yang said with a bitter smile. We should have arrested him, or killed him, or something other than eating his food and listening to his lies. We have no proof, Reinhardt pointed out. And even if we did, who would believe us? Two displaced commanders from another galaxy accusing the Republic's beloved Chancellor of being a secret dark wizard? We'd be dismissed as paranoid foreigners, or worse, assassinated before we could present evidence. So what do we do? Reinhardt was quiet for a moment, his ice blue eyes reflecting the city lights of Coruscant. "We do what we always do, Yang Wenli. We play the game until we're in position to flip the board. We accept his offer, take his resources, and use them to build our own power base. And when the time comes when Palpatine reveals himself and makes his move, we'll be ready to stop him." "That's a long game," Yang observed. "And a dangerous one. All games worth playing are dangerous," Reinhard replied. "But I didn't conquer half a galaxy by playing it safe." "Did you?" Yang thought about the battles he'd fought, the impossible odds he'd faced, the number of times he'd gambled everything on a single strategy. "No. I suppose I didn't." I suppose I didn't." They parted at the landing platform, each returning to their respective flagships. Behind them, in his residence, Palpatine reviewed the recordings of the dinner with satisfaction. "They suspect," he murmured to the empty room. "But suspicion without proof is merely paranoia, and paranoid allies are still allies." He opened a private channel to Count Dooku. "Our admirals are proving predictable after all. They've taken the bait. Now we simply need to keep them invested in the conflict until the time comes to eliminate them. Can you arrange another crisis that requires their intervention?" "Already in motion, Master," Dooku replied. "Within a week, they'll face a threat that will test their capabilities to the limit. And if they fail, then we'll have eliminated 2 variables without dirtying our own hands," Palpatine finished. "Perfect. Proceed as planned." The trap was set. The pieces were in motion, and 2 military geniuses from another galaxy were about to discover that brilliance alone wasn't enough when fighting an enemy who had orchestrated conflicts for 1,000 years. The crisis came exactly as Palpatine had promised, swift, brutal, and designed to test the admirals to their breaking point. A massive separatist offensive erupted across 3 sectors simultaneously: the core world's shipyards at Kuwait, the agricultural hub of Felucia, and most critically, the strategic fortress world of Megiddo, which housed the Republic's primary treasury and banking infrastructure. Yang saw the trap immediately. 3 targets, 3 different strategic values, insufficient Republic forces to defend all of them adequately, he said, studying the tactical displays aboard the Hyperion. "The Chancellor has already requested our intervention," Frederica reported. "Of course he is," Yang muttered. "Megiddo is where the money is. Palpatine cares more about preserving the Republic's financial infrastructure than its shipbuilding capacity or food production, which tells you exactly what his priorities are. Do we refuse?" Yang considered. Refusing would damage their carefully maintained relationship with the Republic. Accepting would commit them to a battle they might not win. Either choice served someone else's agenda. "No," Yang said finally. "We don't refuse, but we don't accept their mission assignment either. Contact Reinhard. Tell him I have a different plan." Aboard the Brunhild, Reinhard received Yang's proposal with immediate suspicion. Yang Wenli suggesting a coordinated operation meant the situation was worse than it appeared. The communication came through on their private channel, the one both admirals maintained despite their rivalry, acknowledging that sometimes survival required cooperation. 3 simultaneous attacks means divided enemy forces. Yang's voice crackled through the transmission. "The Separatists are strong, but they're not infinite. They've committed major fleets to all 3 operations, which means their reserve forces are depleted. Somewhere in Separatist territory, there's a staging area or command center that's currently vulnerable." Reinhardt's eyes narrowed. "You want to ignore the defensive mission and attack their territory directly. I want to hit them where they're not expecting it, while they're committed to offensive operations. Force them to recall their fleets to defend their own worlds. Turn their strategic offensive into a desperate defensive scramble." It was the kind of audacious strategy that could win wars or lose them catastrophically. Reinhard felt a familiar thrill, the rush of recognizing a brilliant but dangerous gambit. "Do you have a target?" "Raxus Secundus," Yang said. "The Separatist capital, lightly defended right now because they've committed everything to these 3 offensives. If we hit it hard enough, Count Dooku will have no choice but to recall his forces to protect his political center. The attacks on Kuat, Felucia, and Megiddo will collapse without reinforcement. Palpatine will be furious, Reinhardt observed. He explicitly ordered us to defend Megiddo. Then let him be furious, Yang said. We're not Republic officers. We don't take orders. We agreed to assist with critical threats, not to follow every command like obedient soldiers. This is us assisting, just not the way he expected. Reinhardt smiled coldly. I'll have my fleet ready to move within the hour. But Yang, if this fails, if we lose both our fleets, attacking a fortified separatist world while Republic systems burn, we'll have proven ourselves useless at best and traitors at worst. Then we'd better not fail, Yang said simply. The transmission ended, and Reinhardt turned to his assembled admirals. Prepare for immediate departure. We're going to attack the enemy capital while they're busy attacking ours. It's either brilliant or suicidal. We'll find out which. My money's on brilliant, Mittermeier said with a grin. Though, with you and Yang Wenli working together, it might be both. And the journey to Raxus Secundus took 18 hours at maximum hyperspace velocity. 18 hours during which the separatist attacks on Republic worlds intensified. Reports flooded in of orbital bombardments, droid armies landing on planetary surfaces. The Jedi Council contacted Yang directly, demanding to know why his fleet was heading away from the battle rather than toward it. Admiral Wen Li, Megiddo is under siege, Mace Windu's hologram said, his tone harsh with barely controlled anger. The Chancellor specifically requested your assistance. Instead, you're heading into the Outer Rim. Explain yourself. We're solving the problem rather than treating the symptom, Yang replied calmly. If we defend Megiddo, we save one world. If we attack Raxus Secundus, we force the Separatists to abandon all three offensives. It's basic strategic calculation. It's a gamble, Mace Windu countered. One that risks everything if you're wrong. All strategy is gambling. Master Windu. The only question is whether you're betting with good odds or bad ones. I believe our odds are good, but I understand your concern. If we fail, you're welcome to say, I told you so at our funerals. The transmission ended before the Jedi could respond further. Frederica looked at Yang with concern. Sir, you're burning bridges with the Jedi. If this doesn't work, bridges won't matter because we'll be dead, Yang said pragmatically. And if it does work, the Jedi will grudgingly accept that maybe, just maybe, we know what we're doing. Raxus Secundus appeared on their sensors 12 hours later, a world of industrial sprawl and political monuments, the beating heart of the Separatist alliance. And just as Yang had predicted, its orbital defenses were minimal. The massive fleets that normally protected the capital had been deployed to the offensive operations, leaving only a garrison force and automated defense platforms. It's almost too easy, Reinhardt murmured, studying the tactical display. You should be, Yang agreed over their communication channel. This could be a trap. Dooku might have anticipated this exact strategy and left the capital deliberately vulnerable to draw us in. And if it is a trap, then we spring it. Destroy whatever forces they've hidden and proceed with the attack anyway, Yang said. At this point, we're committed. Retreating would accomplish nothing except confirming our enemy's belief that we can be manipulated through fear. The combined fleets emerged from hyperspace in a combat formation that would have impressed any military scholar. Yang's forces positioned to strike the planet's orbital infrastructure, while Reinhardt's groups moved to engage any defending ships. It was coordinated, efficient, and executed with the precision of commanders who had studied each other's tactics for years. The Separatist garrison responded immediately, but they were hopelessly outnumbered and outmaneuvered. Droid fighters launched in desperate waves, only to be cut down by superior pilots using tactics the droids' programming hadn't anticipated. Defense platforms fired with mechanical accuracy, only to be destroyed by concentrated bombardment from ships that refused to fight on predictable vectors. And on the planet's surface, in the Separatist Senate building, Count Dooku watched the assault unfold with growing alarm. "Recall the fleets immediately," he ordered. "All 3 offensive operations are to disengage and return to Raxus Secundus at maximum speed." End quote. "But my lord, the attacks on Kuat and Megiddo are on the verge of success." "Success means nothing if we lose the capital," Dooku snapped. "Do it now." Across 3 separate star systems, Separatist commanders received the emergency recall orders with confusion and frustration. Victory had been within reach. Kuat's shipyards were burning. Megiddo's treasury was breached. Felucia's defenders were collapsing. And now they were ordered to abandon it all and rush back to defend a world that should have been invulnerable. The Republic forces, bloodied and exhausted but still fighting, watched in amazement as the Separatist fleets suddenly broke off their attacks and jumped to hyperspace. Within minutes, overwhelming assaults became manageable skirmishes, then ceased entirely as the last enemy ships fled. In the Jedi Temple, Obi-Wan Kenobi stared at the tactical displays in disbelief. They did it. They actually did it. "Unorthodox tactics," Yoda observed, his ancient eyes gleaming. "But effective they were. Much to learn from these admirals, we have." Mace Windu said nothing, but his expression suggested he was wrestling with the uncomfortable realization that 2 outsiders had just accomplished what the Jedi and Republic military couldn't. They'd forced the Separatists into a strategic retreat across multiple fronts simultaneously. Above Raxus Secundus, Yang watched the orbital defenses crumble and made a calculated decision. "Cease fire. Do not target the planetary surface. Frederica, open a channel to Count Dooku directly." "Sir, just do it. I want to talk to him." The channel opened after a brief delay, and Count Dooku's holographic form materialized, aristocratic even in defeat, his expression controlled but visibly strained. "Admiral Wen Li, you've demonstrated impressive strategic vision. My congratulations." "I'm not here for congratulations," Yang said. "I'm here to make you an offer. Surrender Raxus Secundus without further bloodshed, and we won't bombard your capital from orbit. You'll have time to evacuate your political leadership and essential personnel. In exchange, you'll withdraw your forces completely from Republic space for the next 3 standard months. No attacks, no raids, no offensive operations." Dooku's expression betrayed genuine surprise. "You're offering me terms? After you've won?" "I'm offering to avoid unnecessary casualties," Yang corrected. "There are millions of civilians on that planet, Count. Droid soldiers and battleships are replaceable. People aren't. If you refuse, I'll destroy your orbital infrastructure and cripple your capital's industrial capacity. But I'd prefer not to kill civilians in the process." Reinhardt's voice cut into the channel, clearly having been listening. "Don't mistake mercy for weakness, Count. We could burn your entire capital if we chose. Admiral Wen Li is being generous. I recommend you accept before I override him." The threat was real, and Dooku knew it. He studied both admirals for a long moment, the weary Democrat who wanted to minimize suffering and the brilliant autocrat who would destroy anything in his path without hesitation. "You're offering a temporary ceasefire, not a permanent peace," Dooku observed. "Permanent peace requires political solutions we can't provide," Yang said. "We're military commanders, not diplomats, but 3 months of ceasefire gives both sides time to reassess, negotiate, perhaps find alternatives to endless bloodshed, or you can refuse. We'll reduce your capital to rubble, and the war continues exactly as before, but with additional thousands dead. Your choice." Dooku's jaw tightened, but after a moment, he inclined his head. "Very well. 3 months ceasefire. I'll issue the orders immediately. But Admiral, yes, my master will not appreciate this interference. You've disrupted plans years in the making. He doesn't forgive such transgressions. Then your master and I will have an interesting conversation eventually, Yang said calmly. Until then, evacuate your people. We'll hold position in orbit for 6 hours, then withdraw. The channel closed, and Reinhardt's private communication opened immediately. You realize you just showed mercy to an enemy who would have shown us none? I realize I potentially saved thousands of civilian lives, Yang countered. And I forced the Separatists into accepting a ceasefire that gives the Republic a strategic advantage. 3 months without attacks means 3 months for the Republic to regroup, rearm, and potentially pursue diplomatic solutions. It's not mercy, it's strategy. It's both, Reinhardt said. And that's why you'll never be as effective as you could be. Your conscience limits your tactical options. My conscience keeps me human, Yang replied. Yours should try it sometime. Despite the harsh words, both admirals knew they'd just accomplished something remarkable. They'd coordinated a strategic offensive that had succeeded beyond reasonable expectations, forced enemy withdrawal across multiple fronts, and secured a temporary ceasefire through military pressure combined with restraint. The victory was absolute. The consequences would be equally so. In his office on Coruscant, Supreme Chancellor Palpatine received the news with a carefully controlled expression. Outwardly, he appeared pleased. 3 Republic worlds saved. Enemy forces in retreat. A temporary ceasefire that the Senate would celebrate as a diplomatic triumph. Inwardly, Darth Sidious was calculating how to kill 2 admirals who had just demonstrated they could not be controlled. Lord Tyrannus, he said into his private communicator, using the encrypted Sith channel. Your assessment? They're more dangerous than we anticipated, Dooku replied. They don't think like Republic commanders. They don't fight like Jedi. They're strategic innovators who see patterns we've deliberately hidden. If they're allowed to continue operating independently, they will disrupt the entire war. Then we must ensure they don't operate independently, Sidious said coldly. Prepare Operation Nightfall's preliminary phase. They'll serve as examples. And Count Dooku? Yes, Master. The 3-month ceasefire is unacceptable. Find a way to break it. Make it appear as though the Separatists were provoked. I want this war hot again within 6 weeks. These admirals have given the Republic hope. We must crush that hope before it spreads. As you command, Master. Aboard the Hyperion, Yang Wenli finished his cold tea and stared at the stars beyond his viewport. They'd won. They'd saved 3 worlds and forced a ceasefire. They demonstrated strategic brilliance that would be studied for decades. So why did he feel like they'd just made a fatal mistake? Frederica, he said quietly. Increase security protocols across all ships. Double all sensor sweeps. I want to know about any ship, probe, or communication within a light year of our position. Sir, we just won. The threat should be minimal. The threat is never minimal when you've embarrassed powerful people. Yang interrupted. We just undermined Palpatine's authority by ignoring his orders and achieving better results. We forced Dooku to accept terms. We proved that non-Force users can outthink Sith and Jedi alike. That makes us threats to everyone in power. You think they'll try to kill us? I think they've already started planning how, Yang said grimly. Now we need to figure out how to survive what's coming. What a despoted overweight. What a despoted overweighted have a Kantu Manu overweight. The assassination attempt came 3 weeks into the ceasefire, and it was so sophisticated that Yang almost admired the planning behind it. It began with what appeared to be a distress signal from a Republic diplomatic vessel in neutral space, a courier ship carrying Senator Bail Organa of Alderaan, one of the few politicians both admirals had come to respect during their time in this galaxy. The message claimed engine failure, life support degradation, and requested immediate assistance. Yang saw the trap instantly. It's too convenient, too perfectly calibrated to appeal to our sense of obligation. Senator Organa is exactly the kind of person we'd risk ourselves to save. Agreed, Frederica said. But if it's legitimate and we ignore it, then a good man dies and we live with that guilt. Yang finished. Which is exactly why it's such an effective trap. Whoever planned this understands our psychology remarkably well. Reinhard, monitoring the same distress call from the Brunhild, came to identical conclusions. His response was characteristically direct. He transmitted a message to Yang on their private channel, obviously a trap. I'm going anyway. If you're not a coward, you'll join me. Ah, join me. Yang sighed. Reinhard knew exactly how to manipulate him. Questioning his courage was guaranteed to provoke response. I really hate that man sometimes. But you're going, Frederica observed. Of course I'm going. If it's a trap, Reinhard will need support. If it's legitimate, Senator Organa will need rescue. Either way, we respond, but carefully. Yang turned to his tactical officers. Minimum force deployment. 2 cruisers, 4 destroyers. Fighter screen. The main fleet stays in defensive position. If this is bait for a larger ambush, I want our primary forces ready to respond, not caught in the trap with us. Reinhard made similar calculations, though his idea of minimum force was considerably more aggressive. He took the Brunhild itself, along with 3 battleships and a full fighter wing. If there were enemies waiting, he intended to obliterate them. The diplomatic vessel drifted exactly where the coordinates indicated a sleek Republic courier. Its engines dark, emergency lights flickering across its hull. It looked exactly like a ship in distress, which made Yang even more suspicious. Frederica, full sensor sweep. I want to know about every asteroid, every debris field, every gravitational anomaly within 10,000 kilometers. The scans came back clean. Too clean. Space was never this empty. Never this conveniently devoid of interference. Someone cleared this area, Yang muttered. Removed anything that might give away hidden ships or energy signatures. Reinhard, are you seeing this? I'm seeing a very expensive setup, Reinhard replied. Whoever arranged this spent significant resources. That suggests either a major power backing the operation or someone desperate enough to commit everything to killing us. Or both, Yang said. Proceed with boarding operations, but keep your main ships at maximum defensive distance. If anything happens, the Brunhild sensors screamed warnings simultaneously with the Hyperions. Ships were decloaking, dozens of them, emerging from stealth technology that shouldn't have existed in this galaxy. They weren't Republic designs. They weren't Separatist configurations. They were something else entirely. Unknown vessels bearing Imperial markings, Frederica reported. But not Separatist Imperial, these are different. Older designs, modified with advanced stealth systems. They're powering weapons. Yang's mind raced through possibilities in microseconds. Imperial markings, but not Separatist. Advanced stealth technology. Targeting both Admiral fleets simultaneously. This wasn't a Separatist operation. This wasn't even a Republic Black Ops mission. This was something older, darker, and far more concerning. All ships, evasive maneuvers. Target the lead vessels, disable their coordination. The ambush fleet opened fire, and space erupted in torrents of turbolaser fire and missile salvos. But Yang had positioned his ships defensively, anticipated the attack vectors, and his fleet responded with the practiced efficiency of crews who had fought together for years. Reinhard's response was even more aggressive. The Brunhild didn't evade it, accelerated directly toward the ambush ships, weapons blazing, fighter squadrons deploying in attack formations that used the enemy's own crossfire against them. All ships, target their command vessel. Reinhard ordered. Concentrated fire. I want it crippled within 90 seconds. The battle was brief, brutal, and decisively one-sided, but not in the way the ambushers had expected. Within 5 minutes, 3 ambush ships were disabled, 2 were destroyed, and the rest were desperately trying to re-engage their stealth systems and flee. Disable their engines, but don't destroy them, Yang commanded. I want prisoners. I want to know who sent them. I want to know who sent them. 2 ships were captured before they could escape. The rest vanished into hyperspace, fleeing with the panicked desperation of mercenaries who'd realized they were fighting opponents far above their capability level. The diplomatic vessel, predictably, was empty except for a bomb powerful enough to vaporize anything that came aboard. Yang's people disarmed it remotely, while Reinhardt's Marines boarded the captured ambush ships. What they found confirmed Yang's worst suspicions. The ships were crewed by mercenaries from the Galactic underworld, professional killers hired through intermediaries who had been hired through other intermediaries, creating a chain of deniability so complex that tracing it back to the original client would be nearly impossible. But the equipment told a different story. The stealth systems were cutting-edge military technology, the kind that required Republic or Separatist military contracts to acquire. Someone with access to both sides' resources had armed these mercenaries. Palpatine, Yang said quietly, reviewing the evidence aboard the Hyperion. It has to be. He's the only one with access to both Republic and Separatist military technology. He wanted us dead, but he couldn't order it directly without exposing himself. So he hired proxies through enough layers that it would be impossible to prove his involvement. Can we prove any of this? Frederica asked. Not in a way that would convince the Senate or the Jedi, Yang admitted. It's all circumstantial. But it confirms what we already suspected. Palpatine is the Sith Lord orchestrating this war, and he views us as threats that need to be eliminated. End quote. 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 Reinhardt's hologram appeared in the command center. We should strike now. We know he's the enemy. We attack Coruscant, kill Palpatine, and let the Republic sort itself out afterward, and become the villains who assassinated a democratically elected leader based on suspicion and circumstantial evidence? Yang countered. The Republic would turn against us instantly. The Jedi would hunt us down. We'd accomplish nothing except proving Palpatine's propaganda about external threats right. Then what do you suggest? Reinhardt demanded. We wait until he tries to kill us again? Eventually, he'll succeed. No, Yang said slowly, an idea forming. We force him to reveal himself. We create a situation where Palpatine has to choose between maintaining his cover and achieving his ultimate objective. We make the cost of hiding higher than the benefit. End quote. End quote. How? Yang pulled up a holographic map of the galaxy, highlighting key systems and political structures. The Jedi are the primary obstacle to Palpatine's transformation of the Republic into an empire. He can't move openly against them without revealing himself. But if the Jedi were distracted, divided, or doubting their own role, that would give him the opening he needs. You want to undermine the Jedi? Reinhardt sounded intrigued. I want to force Palpatine to move against them prematurely, Yang corrected. If we can create a crisis that threatens his timeline, makes him believe the Jedi are becoming aware of his true nature, he'll have to act, and when he acts, we'll have proof. That's an incredibly dangerous game, Frederica said quietly. If we misjudge the timing, if Palpatine moves faster than we anticipate, then the Jedi die and we're left fighting a Sith Lord who controls the entire Republic military, Yang finished. Yes, I'm aware of the risks, but we're out of options. Palpatine just tried to kill us using untraceable mercenaries. Next time, he'll use something we can't defend against. We need to take the initiative before he does. Reinhardt studied Yang's face through the hologram, searching for doubt and finding only grim determination. You realize this plan requires us to essentially betray the Jedi? To manipulate them into a position where they become targets? I realize we're playing with lives as chess pieces, Yang said, his voice heavy. I hate it, but the alternative is letting Palpatine win. Letting this war continue until he's consolidated enough power that no one can stop him. Thousands will die if we act. Millions will die if we don't. The silence stretched between them, 2 brilliant commanders contemplating a plan that violated every principle of honor they'd once held sacred. But principles were luxuries they could no longer afford. Tell me the plan, Reinhardt said finally. In detail. And it had better be brilliant, Yang Wenli, because if we're going to damn ourselves, we might as well do it effectively. Over the next hour, Yang laid out a strategy so complex, so dependent on perfect timing and psychological manipulation, that even Reinhardt, who had orchestrated campaigns across dozens of star systems, felt his respect for Yang's tactical mind increase. The plan required them to feed carefully selected intelligence to the Jedi Council information about increased separatist activity in the Coruscant system, about suspicious communications between certain senators and Count Dooku, about possible infiltration of Republic government by Sith agents. All of it true, all of it documented, all of it pointing toward a conspiracy so vast that the Jedi would have to investigate. And when they investigated, when they started piecing together the truth, Palpatine would panic. He would have to accelerate his plans. And when he moved against the Jedi, Yang and Reinhardt would be ready. It requires us to sacrifice our relationship with the Jedi, Yang said. They'll see this as manipulation. They'll never trust us again. They already don't trust us, Reinhardt countered. And trust is worthless compared to survival. Besides, if this works, if we expose Palpatine and stop his transformation of the Republic, the Jedi can hate us all they want. We'll still have saved them. Saved them by treating them as pawns, Yang said bitterly. Yes, Reinhardt agreed. Welcome to my world, Yang Wenli. Sometimes the only way to save people is to use them. You've spent your career avoiding that reality, but this galaxy doesn't allow for clean hands and clear consciences. You want to stop Palpatine? Then get your hands dirty. Yang closed his eyes briefly. Reinhardt was right. He'd always known the golden-haired admiral was right. The difference between them wasn't competence or intelligence. It was Yang's desperate desire to preserve his own moral integrity versus Reinhardt's willingness to sacrifice anything, including his soul, to achieve victory. But this wasn't his galaxy. These weren't his people. And the alternative was letting a Sith Lord transform an entire civilization into an empire built on fear and tyranny. All right, Yang said quietly. We do it your way. We manipulate the Jedi. We force Palpatine's hand. And if we survive, we can spend the rest of our lives living with what we've done. If we survive, we can find a way home and leave this galaxy to sort out its own problems. Reinhardt corrected. I didn't come here to save anyone, Yang. I came here through accident, and I'll leave the same way if possible. But while we're here, we might as well prevent a catastrophe. The plan was set. The conspiracy would be carefully leaked. The Jedi would investigate, and Palpatine would be forced into the open. What neither admiral knew was that Darth Sidious had been monitoring their communications through methods so sophisticated that even Yang's paranoid security protocols hadn't detected them. The Sith Lord sat in his office on Coruscant and listened to their entire planning session with growing amusement. They think they're manipulating me, he murmured. How delightful. Let them believe they're in control. Let them feed the Jedi their carefully selected intelligence. It will only accelerate my timeline by a few weeks. And when Order 66 is executed, when the Jedi are destroyed and the Republic becomes the Empire, these brilliant admirals will understand that they were never players in this game. They were always pieces. He opened a secure channel to his most trusted agent, one that neither Yang nor Reinhardt knew existed. Commander Cody, Sidious said, prepare the inhibitor chips for activation. The time is coming sooner than anticipated. And when I give the order, make certain the admirals are positioned exactly where I need them. They're about to learn that brilliance without complete information is just another form of blindness. On Camino, in the cloning facilities where the Republic's army had been grown and programmed, Commander Cody received the order and acknowledged it with the mechanical obedience of a man whose free will had been compromised before birth. The trap was closing. The admirals believed they were setting it. In reality, they'd just walked into one far more sophisticated than anything they'd imagined. The endgame had begun. The intelligence reached the Jedi Council through carefully orchestrated leaks, anonymous transmissions, citing verifiable sources, encrypted data packets containing Republic military communications, intercepted separatist orders that pointed toward a conspiracy at the highest levels of government. Yang had crafted each piece of evidence like a master composer building to a crescendo, each note true, but arranged to create a specific emotional response. Mace Windu reviewed the data with growing alarm. These communications suggest that Chancellor Palpatine has been in contact with Count Dooku throughout the war. Not as enemies, but as coordinators. Impossible. Ki Adi Mundi protested. The Chancellor has led the Republic's war effort. He's been the Separatists' greatest opponent. Has he? Obi-Wan asked quietly, studying the evidence. Or has he been managing both sides? Look at this, every major Separatist offensive has been preceded by Senate debates that granted Palpatine additional emergency powers. Every Republic victory has been significant enough to maintain hope, but never decisive enough to end the war. It's almost as if someone wants the war to continue. Yoda finished, his ancient voice heavy with terrible understanding. Blind, we have been arrogant. So certain of our perception that the truth we could not see even when before us it was placed. The admirals, Mace Windu said suddenly. This intelligence came from them. Yang Wen-Li and Reinhard von Lohengram. They've been investigating since they arrived, and saying nothing to us until now, Obi-Wan observed. Why? If they suspected Palpatine was the Sith Lord, why not bring this to the Council immediately? Because we wouldn't have believed them, Yoda said with brutal honesty. Outsiders, they are. No connection to the Force, they have. Accuse the Chancellor, they did. And dismiss them as paranoid, we would have. Evidence they needed, proof undeniable. And now, that proof they have provided. The Council sat in heavy silence, contemplating the implications. If Palpatine was the Sith Lord, if he had orchestrated the entire Clone Wars, then the Jedi had been unwitting participants in their own destruction. Every battle they'd fought, every command they'd accepted, all of it had served Sidious's grand design. We must confront him, Mace Windu said finally. Arrest him if necessary. If he truly is the Sith Lord, we cannot allow him to remain in power. Careful, we must be, Yoda warned. Popular Palpatine is. Trusted by the Senate, he is. Move against him without absolute proof, and the Jedi Order will be branded traitors. Destroy us. It could. Then we find absolute proof, Mace Windu said. Obi-Wan, contact the admirals. I want to speak with them directly. If they have more evidence, we need to see it. If this is real, if Palpatine is truly the enemy, then we need to be certain before we act. The transmission reached Yang aboard the Times Hyperion Times while he was reviewing casualty reports from the assassination attempt. Obi-Wan's holographic form materialized with an expression that suggested the Jedi Master had aged a decade in the past few hours. Admiral Wen-Li, the Council has reviewed the intelligence you've provided. We need to meet. All of us, including Admiral von Lohengram. This is beyond military strategy now. If what you're suggesting is true, it's true, Yang said quietly. I wish it weren't. I wish we'd arrived in a galaxy with simple conflicts and clear solutions. But Palpatine is the Sith Lord. He's been orchestrating this war from the beginning, and he's very close to achieving his ultimate goal, which is the complete transformation of the Republic into an authoritarian empire with himself as absolute ruler, Yang said. The Clone Wars were never about separatist independence. They were about creating the political and military conditions necessary for that transformation. Emergency powers, militarization, public fear of external threats, all of it justifies consolidating power in a single leader's hands. Palpatine has been building his empire one Senate vote at a time, and the Jedi have been helping him do it. Obi-Wan closed his eyes briefly. We were so certain we were serving the light. You were serving what you believed was right, Yang corrected. That's not the same as being wrong. Palpatine is a master manipulator who's been planning this for decades. The fact that he fooled the Jedi doesn't make you failures. It makes him brilliant and dangerous. The Council wants to confront him, arrest him if necessary. Yang's blood ran cold. No, not yet. You can't move against him until you understand how deep his preparations go. Palpatine wouldn't have spent decades building this conspiracy without contingencies. He'll trigger something catastrophic. What could be more catastrophic than leaving a Sith Lord in control of the Republic, triggering whatever failsafe he's built into the clone army, Yang said grimly. Those soldiers were created under suspicious circumstances. Their loyalty has always been absolute to absolute. What if Palpatine has a way to turn them against the Jedi? What if every clone in the galaxy is programmed with a hidden command that transforms them from allies into executioners? The suggestion hung in the air like a death sentence. Obi-Wan's face went pale. That would be genocide. The clones are everywhere. They fight alongside Jedi across the entire galaxy. If Palpatine could turn them with a single order, the Jedi Order would be destroyed in minutes. Yang finished. Which is why you cannot confront him until we've verified whether such a command exists and neutralized it if it does. How do we do that? We're working on it, Yang said, which was only partially true. He and Reinhard had theories, but no concrete plans. Give us 3 days. Don't move against Palpatine. Don't change your behavior around him. Pretend everything is normal. Can you do that? Obi-Wan was silent for a long moment. You're asking the Jedi Council to knowingly leave a Sith Lord in power while you investigate. If you're wrong, if there is no hidden command, we're giving him time to prepare defenses against us. And if I'm right, and you move now, you'll trigger the execution of every Jedi in the galaxy, Yang countered. I'm not asking you to trust me, Master Kenobi. I'm asking you to consider which risk is greater. The transmission ended, and Yang immediately contacted Reinhard. The Jedi know. They want to arrest Palpatine. I bought us 3 days to find evidence of the clone's programming. 3 days to search military records spanning millions of soldiers across thousands of systems. Reinhard's hologram looked skeptical. Even with both our intelligence divisions working together, that's nearly impossible. But any pardon, Sid, nearly impossible is better than completely impossible, Yang said. And we have one advantage. We know what we're looking for. Some kind of behavioral programming. A command override. Something built into the clones at a genetic or cybernetic level. Focus the search on Kamino's records. That's where the clones were created. Kamino's records will be heavily encrypted and protected by Republic security protocols, Reinhard pointed out. Then break through them, Yang said flatly. Use every hacker, every cryptographer, every intelligence officer we have. This is everything, Reinhard. If we can't prove the clones are compromised, the Jedi move against Palpatine. He triggers whatever failsafe exists, and we all die watching. For once, Reinhard didn't argue. He simply nodded and terminated the transmission. The next 72 hours became a blur of desperate research, encryption breaking, and systematic analysis of clone medical records. Yang's intelligence officers worked in shifts, cross-referencing Kaminoan genetic databases with Republic military protocols. Reinhardt's cryptographers attacked the most heavily secured files with algorithms that wouldn't be invented in this galaxy for decades. On the second day, they found it. Inhibitor chips, Yang said, staring at the medical schematics with sick fascination. Organic cybernetic implants inserted into every clone's brain during fetal development. Officially listed as behavioral inhibitors to prevent aggressive tendencies, actually programmed with specific command codes that override the clone's free will and compel absolute obedience to specific orders. How many orders? Frederica asked. 150 contingency orders, Yang read from the files. Ranging from arrest the Chancellor to eliminate Jedi leadership to... He stopped, his face draining of color. Order 66. Execute all Jedi. They have betrayed the Republic. That's the failsafe. Every clone in the galaxy has been programmed since birth to kill the Jedi on command. The implications were staggering. The Republic's entire military. The soldiers who fought alongside Jedi generals. The men who had saved countless Jedi lives in battle. All of them were sleeper assassins waiting for activation. Can we disable the chips? Frederica asked. Not without alerting Palpatine, Yang said. The chips are monitored. Any mass deactivation would be detected immediately, and we can't extract them from millions of soldiers without anyone noticing. Then the Jedi are doomed. Reinhardt's voice came through the communication channel. The moment they move against Palpatine, he speaks 2 words. Execute Order 66, and every Jedi in the galaxy dies. There's no defense against this. We've already lost. No, Yang said, his mind racing through possibilities with desperate speed. There's one option. One incredibly dangerous option. We tell the Jedi about Order 66. We convince them to evacuate from clone forces before confronting Palpatine. Remove themselves from positions where the clones can execute them easily. That will take days. Possibly weeks. Reinhardt objected. And it will alert Palpatine that we know about the chips. He'll move up his timeline. Then we need to act faster, Yang said. We coordinate with the Jedi for a simultaneous operation. They arrest Palpatine in his office, a place with minimal clone presence, while we jam the communication networks that would carry Order 66 to clone commanders across the galaxy. Cut off Palpatine's ability to activate the order before he has a chance to speak it. That requires perfect timing, Frederica said. If we jam the networks too early, Palpatine suspects something. Too late, and the order goes through. Perfect timing is what we do, Yang said with more confidence than he felt. Contact the Jedi Council. Tell them we have proof. Tell them we need to meet immediately. The meeting took place in a secure location far from the Jedi Temple, a neutral space station that Yang had selected specifically because it had no clone presence. The Jedi Council arrived in full. Yoda, Mace Windu, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Ki-Adi-Mundi, and several others. Yang and Reinhardt stood before them, with holographic displays showing the damning evidence of the inhibitor chips. This is worse than we feared, Yoda said after reviewing the data. Trust the clones, we did. Brothers in battle, they were. And all along, programmed to kill us, they have been. Not programmed to want to kill you, Yang clarified. Programmed to obey without question when commanded. The clones don't know about Order 66. They believe they're serving the Republic faithfully, but when Palpatine activates the order, their free will disappears. They become weapons pointed at you by a man who's been planning your destruction for decades. Then we have no choice, Mace Windu said. We must arrest Palpatine immediately, before he realizes we know. A small team, moving fast, to take him into custody before he can issue the order. Agreed, Reinhardt said. But Yang and I will handle the communications jamming. When you move against Palpatine, we'll cut every military channel in the Coruscant system. He won't be able to transmit Order 66 to the clone forces. And after? Obi-Wan asked. If we succeed in arresting Palpatine, the Senate will demand explanations. The public will be outraged that we've moved against their beloved Chancellor. How do we prove he's a Sith Lord without revealing classified Republic military secrets? Let me worry about political justification, Yang said. If we can arrest Palpatine alive, he'll either confess under interrogation or defend himself with force powers that will prove he's not just a politician. Either way, the truth will come out. But first, we have to survive the arrest. The plan was set. Mace Windu would lead a team of 4 Jedi Masters to Palpatine's office in exactly 6 hours during a scheduled meeting where the Chancellor would be alone with minimal security. Yang and Reinhardt would position their fleets in orbit with communication jamming equipment active, ready to cut every signal the moment the arrest began. It was a plan built on perfect coordination, absolute timing, and the assumption that nothing would go wrong, which, of course, guaranteed that everything would. 6 hours later, Mace Windu and his team entered the Chancellor's office with lightsabers ignited. Palpatine looked up from his desk with an expression of mild surprise that transformed into something terrible. A smile that belonged on a predator, not a statesman. Master Windu, how unexpected. Have you come to arrest me? In the name of the Galactic Senate, you are under arrest, Mace Windu said. "We know what you are. We know about Order 66. Your conspiracy ends now." Palpatine's smile widened. "Does it? How interesting. You think you've outmaneuvered me. You think your displaced admirals have given you the advantage." He stood, and his appearance began to change the grandfatherly facade, burning away to reveal something ancient and malevolent beneath. "But did you ever consider that I wanted you to know that your discovery was itself part of my design?" In orbit, Yang's sensors screamed warnings. "Sir, we're detecting massive power surges across every clone command ship in the system. They're bypassing our jamming through hardwired connections. They knew we'd try to block the signal." On the planet's surface, in military installations across Coruscant, clone commanders received a transmission through channels. Yang's jamming couldn't touch hardwired emergency protocols that had been installed years ago, waiting for exactly this moment. Execute Order 66, and across the galaxy, in 1,000 battlefields and 1,000 starships, clone troopers turned their weapons on the Jedi they'd served beside for 3 years and opened fire. The endgame had become a slaughter, and Yang realized with horrible clarity that they'd been playing Palpatine's game from the beginning. The Sith Lord hadn't been reacting to their plans. He'd been guiding them, step by step, toward this exact moment. They'd thought they were the chess masters. In reality, they'd been pawns who'd just moved into checkmate. The hours that followed would be remembered as the darkest in Jedi history. Order 66 executed across 1,000 worlds. Trusted soldiers transformed into executioners. Legends of the Force cut down by men they'd fought beside. But in Palpatine's office, the outcome was not what the Sith Lord had predicted. Mace Windu's team had entered, expecting a politician who might resist with hidden powers. Instead, they faced Darth Sidious' fully revealed raw hatred made manifest, lightning arcing from his fingertips with the fury of a storm-given consciousness. 2 Jedi Masters fell in the opening seconds, their defense insufficient against power refined over decades. But Mace Windu was not merely a skilled duelist. He was the champion of the Jedi Order, a master of Vapad who channeled darkness itself into righteous fury. His lightsaber became a violet arc of absolute conviction, and for the first time in centuries, Darth Sidious felt something uncomfortably close to doubt. The duel raged while across Coruscant, Yang Wen-Li made the decision that would define everything that followed. "All ships, emergency broadcast on every civilian frequency," Yang commanded. "Bypass military channels entirely, transmit directly to civilian communications networks, news stations, public data streams. I want every citizen of Coruscant to see what's happening in that office. Sir, that will reveal our position. Do it," Yang snapped. "If we don't expose Palpatine now, while Mace Windu is fighting him, the truth dies with the Jedi. The galaxy needs to see their beloved Chancellor throwing Force lightning at the Jedi's greatest warrior. They need to know what he is." The broadcast went live across millions of screens, holographic displays in homes, public news feeds, Senate chamber monitors. Citizens of Coruscant watched in real time as Supreme Chancellor Palpatine, twisted and terrible, wielded powers no mere politician should possess, while Jedi Masters fought for their lives. And in that moment, the careful political narrative Palpatine had spent decades crafting shattered like fragile glass. Reinhard, watching the same feeds, recognized the strategic brilliance immediately. Palpatine can't spin this as Jedi treason when billions of people are watching him use Sith powers. He can still win the fight, Yang said grimly. Mace Windu is outnumbered and tiring. We need to intervene. The Jedi would never forgive us for interfering in their battle, Reinhard pointed out. Then they can hate me from their graves, Yang said. Frederica. Plot firing solution on Palpatine's office. Precision strike through the window. If we can disrupt the fight for even 5 seconds. Yang. That's the Senate district. Civilian structures all around. I know what I'm asking. Yang's voice cracked with the strain. But if Palpatine wins, millions die. If Mace Windu falls, Order 66 completes unopposed. We fire or we watch the Jedi become extinct. Choose. The Hyperion's main batteries aligned with mathematical precision. Reinhardt's Brunhild matched the targeting solution, doubling the firepower. 2 ships from another galaxy, preparing to fire on the office of the Republic's leader, hoping desperately they weren't about to become the villains of history. "Fire," Yang whispered. The turbolaser strike tore through Coruscant's atmosphere with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel, punching through the reinforced windows of Palpatine's office and exploding against the far wall. The concussive force threw Sidious backward, disrupting his lightning for exactly 4.3 seconds. Mace Windu didn't waste the opening. His lightsaber drove forward with absolute commitment. And Darth Sidious, master of the dark side, orchestrator of galactic war, the most powerful Sith in 1,000 years, barely managed to deflect the strike that would have ended him. The broadcast continued. Billions of citizens watched their chancellor's face twist with inhuman rage, watched him summon powers that belonged in ancient nightmares, watched the Jedi fight not as traitors but as desperate defenders against something monstrous. In the Senate chambers, senators who had granted Palpatine emergency powers watched in horror as those powers were wielded by hands crackling with Sith lightning. In military command centers, Republic officers questioned orders that had just transformed loyal soldiers into assassins. In the Jedi Temple, clone troopers hesitated, their programming warring with the evidence of their own eyes that broadcast showing their beloved chancellor as something evil, their Jedi commanders as victims rather than traitors. Order 66 had been activated, but Yang's exposure of Palpatine's true nature had introduced something Sidious had never accounted for. Doubt. Not in every clone, not in every system, but in enough places that the genocide was incomplete. Jedi across the galaxy died by the hundreds, but hundreds more survived, warned by confused clones, protected by clone commanders who chose loyalty to their generals over programmed commands, or simply fortunate enough to be in places where the Order's execution was delayed by confusion and conflicting evidence. The Sith Lord's perfect trap had become chaotic, imperfect, survivable. In his office, now open to the atmosphere, debris floating in the void, Sidious made a calculation. He could continue fighting, possibly kill Mace Windu and the remaining Jedi, but the political damage was catastrophic. His identity as a Sith Lord was broadcast across the galaxy. The Senate knew, the military knew, the citizens knew. His grand design, his careful transformation of democracy into empire, had been exposed before completion. For the first time in decades, Darth Sidious chose retreat over victory. Force lightning erupted from his hands, not to kill, but to blind. And in the chaos, he fled, jumping from his office into the Coruscant underworld, vanishing into the shadows of a city planet that had 1 trillion places to hide. Mace Windu, bloodied and exhausted, watched the Sith Lord escape and made no move to pursue. He simply stood in the ruins of the Chancellor's office, lightsaber still ignited, and spoke into his comlink with a voice that carried across the Jedi network. "This is Master Windu. Palpatine is confirmed as Darth Sidious. He has fled. All Jedi survive. Do not engage clone forces if avoidable. Regroup at designated safe locations. The Order has survived worse. We will survive this." It was not a victory, but it was survival. Yang Wenli sat in his command chair aboard the Hyperion, watching the aftermath unfold, and felt no satisfaction. They had stopped Palpatine's immediate plan. They had prevented the complete destruction of the Jedi Order. They had exposed the Sith Lord to the galaxy, but at what cost? Hundreds of Jedi were dead. The Republic's government was shattered. The clone army was compromised and could never be fully trusted again. The galaxy was plunging into chaos without clear leadership or direction. "We saved them," Frederica said quietly. "The Jedi would have been extinct without our intervention." "We saved some of them," Yang corrected. "Others died because we didn't act fast enough, didn't see deeply enough, didn't understand Palpatine's full strategy until he'd already sprung the trap." "That's not victory, Frederica. That's damage control." Reinhardt's transmission arrived moments later. "Others want to maintain democracy but don't know who to trust. It's chaos." "As expected," Yang said tiredly. We've removed the tyrant before he could consolidate power. But we haven't provided an alternative. That's the problem with revolutions. Much easier to destroy old systems than build functional new ones. The Jedi are requesting a meeting. They want to coordinate the search for Palpatine and discuss the clone army's future. They're also... Reinhard paused, an odd note in his voice. They're thanking us for saving Master Windu and exposing Sidious. Yang smiled bitterly. We manipulated them, used them as bait, and fired on the Senate district without permission. But because it worked, we're heroes instead of criminals. Politics is consistent across galaxies, apparently. Will you meet with them? Yes. Someone needs to help clean up this mess. Might as well be us. The meeting with the surviving Jedi Council members took place on a neutral station to the Jedi Temple was too compromised, too filled with memories of clones who had become executioners. Yoda, Mace Windu, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and a handful of other survivors gathered to face the two admirals who had saved and damned them in equal measure. Grateful, the Jedi Order is, Yoda said, his ancient voice heavy with exhaustion. Used us as bait, you did. Manipulated us into confronting Palpatine. At a time of your choosing. We did, Yang admitted. And I won't apologize for it, because the alternative was worse. If we'd waited, Palpatine would have completed his transformation of the Republic. If we'd moved sooner, we wouldn't have had proof of Order 66. The timing had to be exactly right, which meant we couldn't give you all the information, or you might have acted prematurely. You treated us as pieces in your strategy, Mace Windu said, no different than how Palpatine treated us. No, Reinhard said coldly. Palpatine treated you as victims to be destroyed. We treated you as warriors capable of surviving if given the right support at the right moment. There's a difference, Master Windu, one that hundreds of living Jedi can testify to. The Jedi had no response to that, because as much as they hated being manipulated, they couldn't deny that manipulation had saved lives. What happens now? Obi-Wan asked. Palpatine is still alive. The clone army is compromised. The Republic's government is in chaos. And you two are the most powerful independent military force in the galaxy. What will you do with that power? Yang and Reinhard exchanged glances, a moment of silent communication between rivals who had become something closer to partners through necessity. We're going to do what we always planned, Yang said. We're going to find a way home. This isn't our galaxy. This isn't our fight. We've done what we could, exposed the conspiracy, saved who we could save. Given this galaxy a chance to choose its own future. What happens next is up to the people who actually live here. You're leaving? Mace Windu's surprise was evident. After everything, you're just walking away? We're displaced commanders from another reality, Reinhard said. We have our own wars to fight, our own people to protect. We came here through accident. We helped because we chose to. But we were never meant to stay. Besides, Yang added quietly, this galaxy doesn't need more military strongmen imposing their vision of order. It needs its own people to rebuild democratic institutions, restore trust, and create something better than what Palpatine almost transformed you into. We can't do that for you. We can only give you the chance to do it yourselves. Yoda studied both admirals with ancient eyes that had seen the rise and fall of civilizations. Wise you are, and perhaps wiser than the Jedi have been. Humility, we have lost. Certainty in our righteousness, we possessed. And that certainty, Palpatine used against us. So learn from it, Yang said. And most importantly, he paused, choosing his words carefully. Remember that the Force isn't the only form of wisdom in the galaxy. Sometimes the most valuable insights come from people who see the galaxy without mystical guidance clouding their judgment. It was as close to a lecture as Yang would give to an order of mystical warriors. That they listened without offense suggested how deeply the crisis had shaken their convictions. The Jedi provided them with resources, scientific data, and access to ancient hyperspace navigation techniques that might contain clues about interdimensional travel. It wasn't guaranteed to work, but it was more than they'd had before. 3 months later, Yang Wenli and Reinhard von Lohengram stood on the bridge of their respective flagships, coordinating a hyperspace jump that would either return them home or scatter their atoms across dimensional barriers. If this works, Yang transmitted on their private channel, I suppose I'll see you back in our galaxy, where we'll resume trying to kill each other. If it works, Reinhard agreed. Though I admit, I'll miss having an opponent who genuinely challenges me strategically. Your tactics have forced me to evolve. High praise from the man who thinks evolution means becoming more like me, Yang said with dry humor. It usually does, Reinhard replied. Safe journey, Yang Wenli. And if we meet again on opposite sides of a battlefield, I promise to make your death glorious. I'll settle for surviving long enough to retire and open a tea shop, Yang said. But thank you for the sentiment. The hyperspace jump initiated simultaneously from both fleets. Energy readings spiked beyond anything their sensors had recorded before. The fabric of space began to tear, not with violence, but with something that felt almost like recognition, as if the universe itself remembered these ships and was ready to send them home. Behind them, in the galaxy far, far away, the Republic began the long process of healing. The Jedi rebuilt their order with new humility. The Senate reformed its institutions with new safeguards against concentrated power. The clone army was gradually integrated into society as citizens rather than slaves, their inhibitor chips removed one by one. And in the shadows, Darth Sidious plotted his return, knowing that his grand design had been delayed but not destroyed. The admirals might have won this battle, but the war between light and darkness would continue long after they departed. In the end, two military geniuses from another galaxy had accomplished something the Force itself had struggled with for millennia. They had given people a chance to choose their own destiny, rather than having it dictated by ancient powers and mystical prophecies. They had proven that brilliance, courage, and strategic vision could challenge even the most elaborate conspiracies. And they had shown that sometimes the most powerful force in the galaxy was simply refusing to be anyone's pawn. The ships vanished into hyperspace, leaving behind only the memory of two legends who had changed history through sheer competent defiance of fate itself. May the Force be with you. More stories await.